All right, good evening, everyone. This is the Thursday, September 8th, Town of Monroe Planning Board regular meeting. Noreen, would you please see who's present?
Bonnie Franson,
Present?
Jeff Manson,
Present.
Pat Shea,
Present.
Nick Napoli,
Present.
Dylan Penn,
Present.
and Louis Rivera.
Present.
I'm sorry.
And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members here and our alternate. So Ashley, our alternate can then sit in as the seventh position? Okay, so you will be here as a full member voting. No, that's okay, but so you'll be able to participate as a full member, as a member of the board. With that, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, with that, the first item on the agenda is Monroe Commons. Do we have anyone representing? I know we had a zoning petition in front of us, correct?
Yeah, I don't know whether, Leaper, I don't know whether you want to come up for them.
Right, so I don't know that the applicant has to be here. I think it was.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't think so, but
Yeah.
I know he's part of it, so.
Eva, did you want to discuss what the zone petition is, or do you want to offer any comments? You don't have to, but if you wanted to. You're okay? Okay. So Ashley, do you have a copy of that? Can you give an overview? And that came from you, Noreen? I'm trying to remember where I saved this.
Yes, Valerie sent it to me and I forwarded it on to the board.
Okay.
So the zoning amendment, there's 3 components to it. The first is the height amendment, so that's to increase the height from 40 feet to 50 feet. And I believe it was previously 50 feet in the HI district prior to the rezoning. The second is a parking amendment to allow parking to be reduced by 40% where it's demonstrated to the satisfaction of the board that the combination of uses on a particular site will generate parking that does not overlap or will not occur simultaneously, or the actual parking requirement is less than, or demand, I guess, is less than what's required. So that's similar to currently how the code treats business parks. You're able to reduce it by, I believe, 25%. It's seeking a similar type of reduction ability of 40% for the HI district. And then the third was the maximum lot coverage, is seeking to increase that from 65% to 75%.
So it's specific to the HI zone, correct?
That's correct.
So if we look at, where'd the map go? The reality is, so the HI district is shown in these darker purple colors. And so it's actually not a lot of land that the zone amendment affects. It affects essentially the cluster of parcels that are in the town that are right at the 208 Route 17 interchange, which is where I think Professional Plaza is, that building. And then, of course, it also affects the Monroe Commons parcel. The other parcel down there is, is Joel Mann's building also there, I believe, right? And then I think also the parcel that's now controlled by KJ, where they're parking their waste disposal trucks, is there. So I think that's essentially the areas that it would affect. But really, the bulk of the amendment and any potential change in height is affecting a very limited area of the town, and frankly, it's on the north side of town, which is really not where the bulk of the town is located. Does anyone have any comments they want to offer on the zone petition? Any recommendations, changes, you agree, you disagree, really have no particular strong action or about it?
I do. So, in relation to the 50-foot height in the HI district, my best guess is that the Professional Plaza building is at a 50-foot height based on that it was approved under previous zoning. And so I live adjacent to there. I think for the areas of town that the HI zone is in, that's very appropriate for building height. The LI district is a little bit larger, but it's not all that huge either. Frankly, those two districts are our best commercial industrial tax base in the town. And to not allow a fourth story in that zone when it's such a small part of the town just sort of doesn't make sense to me. I think realistically, where we're talking about for Monroe Commons and the development that's contiguous to there in the town of Palm Tree, that height, 50 feet, is going to be negligible, especially since that property and the adjacent properties there sit down sort of in a bowl compared to all the surrounding areas. So again, I don't see where the 50-foot height along the highway, at the highway interchange over by 130 is a bad thing. And I think it's an opportunity for the town to take advantage of maximizing that small zone that we do have. And for the same reason I feel that way about the 75-foot lot coverage in those areas. I don't think that's necessarily a significant issue for the amount of real estate that we're really talking about compared to the entire town. I don't think it's a bad thing for us to have more discretion than less discretion in relation to parking coverage. Frankly, I feel like our parking regulations require too much parking in general. And to have some more discretion to look at that on a case-by-case basis and use some planning board logic behind those things to make a decision. Discretion isn't a decision. Discretion is just the ability to make a decision, and I have no problem with that power being granted to the planning board.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to add comments to that? Offer any comments with regard to the HI zone?
I would just say that the way that building is situated, it's so far back, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it from an aesthetic point of view, as far as height goes. It's all the way back to the boundary of KJ, and I think when you look at the other buildings around there that are so much taller, it's not going to make any difference, so I wouldn't have any objections.
Right, so in context, we have to remember that Monroe Commons is next to the new development that's in the village of Curious Joel with their tall residential structure. So relatively speaking, that change in the height, as you mentioned, from a context perspective, is not significantly different than what's been constructed there.
That's correct.
Yeah, and then I think the area that's over by the Route 208, Route 17 interchange is developed. I guess in theory, they could add another story if they wanted, but really that's not practical and they probably wouldn't. But, it's developed now, essentially, at the interchange for the most part. So from my perspective, I would say that I'm okay with the language because it's really tailored to the HI zoning district. And so it's limited. It's not asking us to waive parking requirements throughout the entire town, nor is it changing building height for large swaths of the town. This is really a very limited zone change.
I can just add any level of comfort. If you recall, the zoning code does allow the board to require banked parking in the event that they didn't want to waive the full 40%. They could require some of that percentage to be banked. So.
And then as, to emphasize Jeff's points, this is about discretion as opposed to, it's not that it has to be granted, but it gives the planning board under reasonable circumstances and based on the review of the project, to allow those waivers, in essence. And again, after due consideration to the information that's provided. So I am supportive of that, those amendments myself. So does anybody else have any?
Action on that?
Also, I was going to, should we just resolve that the planning board recommends that the revisions be adopted by the town board?
And then that on board by, or from the, one comment I know we discussed, I think last time, was the seeker. So you are the lead agency for the Monroe Commons project, and this is tied to that, which would be part of that action. So I think we previously discussed that the applicant would be, or was requested that the applicant, they're in the process now of completing the DEIS, that the DEIS also address these proposed zoning amendments, part of the project when the scope was finalized originally. So I think that would still be something that would have to be done before the law could actually be adopted.
So, and so that everybody understands, Monroe Commons is in front of the planning board. They received a positive declaration indicating there may be a significant environmental impact from construction of the project. So a scoping document was prepared, a draft environmental impact statement is being prepared, and because we are the involved agency for the action and the lead agency for the action, other agencies cannot take action on any other related actions related to the proposal until we have completed seeker. So this all is based on, while we support it, the action can't occur until seeker is completed for the project, unless the town board determines in its own, findings that there's some way to segment that. But, I'm not aware of that, and I'll defer to them. So with that, I'll make a motion that the planning board recommends the proposed zoning amendments in the petition that was provided to it from Monroe Nininger LLC and received in the town clerk's office dated July 5th, 2022, and that actually a short memo be written up by our attorney just to indicate that the resolution passed, and as a reminder that we're in the midst of seeker and that seeker has to be completed unless the town board has determined otherwise for the Monroe project. So I'll make that motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Noreen?
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
and Luis Rivera.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes, so that takes care of that agenda item. So next agenda item is DG Management, Scunnamunk Road, Monroe, New York. Good evening.
On the microphone, that flash.
There we go.
Very good.
Yes.
Good evening again, John Queenan from Lang & Tully, engineer for the applicant. Also here with me is applicant's representative, Mr. Lipa Deutsch. I think well, I shouldn't say that. I see some new members. So I was going to say, I think we're here with a plan that everyone's familiar with. And I was very excited today to receive a draft preliminary approval resolution.
George, what'd you say? He didn't, oh, okay, sorry. I heard George say something. I wasn't
Oh.
sure if he was
Yeah,
saying
no,
something.
somebody must have come in downstairs.
Okay, thank you.
received a draft preliminary approval resolution. I haven't been here for the last few meetings, but it's my understanding that numerous items have been worked out with regards to the open space and the requirements for the variances, et cetera, and that we're at a point now that hopefully tonight we can go through the preliminary approval resolution and resolve any outstanding issues so that maybe we can move forward and get our outside agency approvals.
So at this point, I'll just ask our engineer and attorney, were there any outstanding comments, or they can be addressed as part of review prior to signing?
Right, there was no new plans, I believe basically all our old comments have been addressed with the exception of the outside agencies, so.
We did make one revision to the plan. We added Lot 10, which is the open space lot.
Okay.
So that was
We added
Yeah.
a single-family lot.
correct. So that is listed as the open space. That was really the only change
Okay.
that we made.
All right. Ashley, other than going through the resolution, is there anything else we need to address? Should we discuss at all the matter with the village at this point, just so the planning board understands? Okay.
So I think it was this week or perhaps last week, the planning board or myself, I did receive a letter from the village. I believe that's all been forwarded to the board. And they were questioning, I think you recall, the road connection issue where the project was originally proposing that the road that's currently in the village would be a village street, and that the portion that is proposed as part of this project would be a town road. So the village previously indicated it would not be accepting dedication of that portion that's in the village, but then I believe the town said it would accept ownership of that portion and of the dedication of the road that's in the town as well. There is some drainage infrastructure that this subdivision relies on that's located in the village. So the village letter also indicated that the planning board would have to approve that because that was not part of the planning board's approval for the village portion that occurred a few years ago. So as resolution is currently, it does include that as an outside agency approval that would be required before the project could be receive final approval.
I don't know if you want to address anything in that regard, or, you know.
I actually had three things in the resolution, but that was the main one. So we'll dive right into it, I guess.
Okay. So, just for the benefit of the new members, again, because you're coming up to speed, this is the subdivision for DG management. It's been in front of the board for a while. It was allowed up to 15 dwelling units. The applicant came in with a cluster subdivision, meaning that the same number of units are allowed, but they're proposing them on smaller lots. And there will be open space area that is part of the overall subdivision. This is preliminary subdivision approval. It is not final, so they will have to come back to us after they've gotten their outside agency approvals. So, this is a start for them to go off and get whatever other health department, et cetera, approvals you might need. This subdivision is coming off of Scunnamunk, not too far from where the fire district, the firehouse is, at the intersection of 208. Here's Scunnamunk, the mobile's right here, so access is through a subdivision that was approved in the village of Monroe, and then it goes back into this property. That kind of sits behind, there's a print center on 208, so it sits behind that particular property. So we're at the point, after having resolved some questions about what is acceptable open space, we determined that there was benefits to an area that was within a major utility easement line to determine that it was eligible as open space, so that's occurred. And so that's where we are in the process with this resolution before us, because that was really the primary outstanding item from the planning board's perspective. And again, there are other approvals that may have to be gotten from other agencies after this to get to subdivision final approval and ultimately signing. So with that, we'll jump into the resolution. This is a draft prepared by our planning board attorney. I have it up there on the screen, and you also received it. So DG Realty Management LLC, is that still the applicant, or did the applicant change?
That's still the applicant, but the owner changed. So
Of
there's
the
an owner's
property.
endorsement.
Okay. Has applied for subdivision approval to permit the creation of 9 residential lots and construct a total of 15 residential units, 3 single-family dwellings and 6 two-family dwellings on a 9.5 acre tract.
Paragraph, we just want to mention Lot 10 as the open space lot.
So should we add
Creation of 9 residential lots
and 1 open
and
space
1
lot?
open space. And then in parentheses, I'll put Lot 10. Construct a total of 15 residential units, 3 single-family, 6 two-family.
Okay, property involved. The property affected by this resolution is located along Rico Terrace and is shown on the tax maps of the town of Monroe as tax parcel 1-1-96. Property affected by this resolution is located in the SR10 zoning district of the town of Monroe. And then there's a recitation of the various submittals that have been made to the town planning board. You can see this dates back to March of 2019. So various environmental
There
assessment
are some
forms.
blanks in there.
The STWIP is November 21st. 20.
And then the renderings.
Renderings came with the architectural drawings, which 24th, 2021.
Okay. And then we have the subdivision plat itself with all the sheet numbers. Last revised August 22, 2022. Application was filed with the planning board on or about March 28, 2019. The application constitutes
Typo there.
a major subdivision. As it involves more than 4 lots, planning board reviewed a conventional subdivision plan in order to establish the maximum number of lots or dwellings that shall be permitted on the property, i.e. the residential yield. We determined March 12, 2020, that the yield could be up to 15 lots or dwelling units. Advise applicant that the cluster subdivision plan should be advanced through the process. Planning board thereafter referred the applicant to the town of Monroe ZBA to obtain an area variance from the requirement in town code to set aside 50% of the gross area of the parcel as protected open space. And this was as a result of most of the property being burdened by utility easement that at the time we did not feel had conservation value. ZBA denied that variance, and then the applicant returned back to the planning board and made further submissions and evaluations to provide proof that there was conservation value to that particular utility easement. So that's what this whole paragraph is reflecting. So therefore, on August 16th, 2022, the planning board voted to allow the applicant to pursue the cluster subdivision. So seeker type of action, this is an unlisted action. As per the State Environmental Quality Review Act, we are the lead agency, which was established on December 10th, 2020. We issued a negative declaration on January 19th, 2022, indicating there would be no significant adverse environmental impact. Public hearing was convened on March 15th, 2022, and it was held open. with the applicant's consent until August 16, 2022. Application was referred to the Orange County Planning Department for review. They had 2 binding comments within its report regarding sewer capacity and water capacity, and determined that no further action is required as the project's within Orange County Sewer District Number 1, and is not subject to allocation of sewer under the Moodna intermunicipal agreement, which affects a different area of the town. And the well testing was reviewed and considered as part of this, and the town's hydrogeologist found that the wells were adequate to meet the needs of the subdivision. So then we have our general findings. Determined approval of the subdivision will substantially serve the public convenience, safety, and welfare. Land can be subdivided such a character that it can be used safely for building purposes. And again, all the proofs that are made as part of the zoning regulations and Town of Monroe subdivision regulations. And then there's a paragraph with regard to cluster subdivision and why that is appropriate for this particular project. And I guess that last revised 8/22/2022 is okay? That's highlighted in yellow? That's the date? One of the important points, applicant will be required to submit a proposed conservation easement running to the town or another governmental entity or other appropriate entity and a conservation easement report prior to final approval. So that'll be done between now and final.
I had highlighted that I wasn't sure if you've had discussions. I know at some point, I think you did have discussions with the town, if you've had any more discussions as far as the easement. But I believe your plan was that the town would hold the easement and the HOA would own the property, is that?
On the mic, John.
The town could take the parcel if they so choose. Or the HOA would own the parcel in its entirety with a restrictive covenant easement filed over that.
And would the town, though, be the holder of that easement, or who would be did you not have those?
I haven't looked into
Okay.
that far, but they could if they wanted to.
So it'll have to be either the town or someone that's acceptable to the town, a land trust, someone to enforce that.
And again, then we determine based on future and present need that project presents a proper case for requiring a park or parks, but they cannot be located on this site, so therefore a payment and fee of lieu of providing parkland will be provided. Here, public improvements, there's a list of public improvements. Is there any additions or changes that are needed to this?
Just taking out retaining walls. There are retaining walls proposed on the property, but on one of the, or a couple of the lots, none that are going to be publicly owned. But the bullet above that, which is the provision of 2 inches of suitable topsoil, at the end of that, I had after the thereof, within the proposed roadway right-of-way. That last bullet on that site grading, truck site, and put road right-of-way grading. So the applicant doesn't have to bond all of the grading on the property, just what's going to be dedicated to the town.
Changes to this language highlighted in yellow?
I didn't have any.
Okay. So then the resolution of approval, now therefore the planning board resolves to approve the preliminary major subdivision application of DG Realty Management LLC. As said, proposals depicted on the plat identified above and upon conditions outlined below, and the chairwoman or her planning board member designee is authorized to sign the plat upon satisfaction of those conditions below, noted to be conditions precedent to such signing. Quick question, so that you actually have to come back with the final plan. So that's the plan that gets signed. Should we even have this with regard to signing?
Some of the conditions are, although it will ultimately be the final plat that has to get signed, some of the conditions as they're worded now do refer to the signing, because they'll just be carried over into any ultimate final approval as well. But it could be,
Maybe now therefore said proposed and picked on plat identified above and upon conditions outlined below.
sign though, the,
No, because I don't think the preliminary gets filed.
not with the county.
Yeah, not with the town either.
Oh,
We don't.
signature.
Yeah, I don't think we sign them, just the final. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Right? Outline below. And then once, either these conditions will be met, or you come back, and then they're made conditions of the final.
And I
So they
think-
may be repeated in a final subdivision.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, it's a good summary to know how to get to the end as
Yeah.
well, so yeah. And I think Ashley noted most of them prior to final approval or prior to signing, so
Right.
that's fine.
And this would be probably true if this was a minor subdivision, because then we do both. But with major, we know you have to go off and come back. Specific conditions prior to final approval, applicant must address all outstanding issues raised in the various memoranda of the planning board engineer. Do we have Cala, she was done with Esposito's?
Did sign off
Off
on
on
the
it?
landscaping. Yep.
Okay. Plat shall not be signed until receipt of a letter from the planning board engineer certifying that all deficiencies known as memoranda have been remedied. Prior to signing the plat must be revised to identify current record owner. Prior to the signing of the plat, applicant shall place all required map notes and notations. The applicant shall place all required map notes and notations on the plat sheets. That will be recorded in the Orange County Clerk's office, including but not limited to the following: standard notations, permanent open space notations, erosion sediment control, permitted parking and required front yards. Other agencies. Approval is subject to delivery of written approvals from the agencies listed below, and no final approval of the subdivision shall be granted until such approvals are obtained or until the obtaining of such approvals is made a condition precedent of some other event. And so here's our list. And now you have a comment.
Highlighted in yellow, so.
Yes.
Just real quick, the preliminary approval will open the doors to go to the health department. So we haven't gone there yet, we can't till we get that. We do have approval for the sewer main extension from both the county and the DEC, so that one's done already. Village of Monroe, road connection, I think it should read traffic improvements. The road connection is existing already, I mean, it's there. So what we're doing is those improvements for the signage and the striping of, don't block the box, intersection improvements that we went over with the traffic. So I think in general, it should just say traffic improvements. The village DPW has already signed off on that, so they're in approval with what we're doing there.
So I'll just do a / traffic improvements. So it's
That's fine.
related to the road connection, but you're talking about the traffic improvements at
Correct.
that intersection.
Yes.
Okay.
When we come to the planning board, I'll be blunt. I honestly don't see a reason why we're going back to the Village of Monroe Planning Board for a subdivision in the town that isn't changing any lot lines or anything in the village. We're putting in drainage infrastructure. There's actually 2 projects going on. There's a drainage infrastructure project underway, under review by the DOT and the village on Scunnamunk, going from the mobile station up through the intersection with 208, up Scunnamunk, past our property. That was a plan that was put in probably almost a year ago by a group of homeowners on Scunnamunk because of drainage problems that they were having. So that's been under review by DOT for quite some time. We're almost to the end of that review. Couple that with the plan that's already approved in the village for the drainage on the street from 310, which the village has already said that they don't want, nor do they want to be involved in. So currently that's privately owned. That's what's being proposed to be turned over to the town through the town board action. Our property has prepared a full SWIP, and in doing so, we're limiting our flows to what pre-development flows are. And we come down to a point where we could let it outflow and go over land and go down the street, or we could put it into a pipe and bring it down the street. So looking at it from an engineering perspective, we want to collect it, we want to keep it collected, and we want it to go out.
Would it be legal to make it overland flow?
Yeah.
Don't you have to normally discharge to some stream or water body or something?
What I think you're referring to overland would be to existing drainage swale.
Right now, it's a point, it's a study point, and if I collect it and I level spread it, it's done all over. Not every discharge point has a swale or a stream or a conveyance. It can be discharged again.
But that's not what the plans show.
No, the plan doesn't show that because it makes more sense to put it into the pipe.
Right, so this is the crux of the problem. We have a letter that says that if the improvements are going to be installed within the village in that subdivision, that there's some kind of planning board review that has to happen. If you didn't have that drainage pipe there, then we wouldn't be involving the village if there's no improvements within that subdivision in the village. Well, let me back up. What drainage improvements are proposed within the village of Monroe from the town of Monroe and the stormwater basin?
Pipe.
So a pipe has to be installed within that.
Doesn't have to be, but that's what we're proposing.
Well, that's what you're showing, so that's, right.
So we're proposing.
You don't have to, but that's what you have on
Correct.
plans.
That's on the plans, and we're proposing a pipe to be installed in what is right now a private road that has an easement to install any utilities necessary for this property.
Coupled with the fact that they've controlled the peak flow to pre-existing conditions, therefore not adding any additional to what was already studied
Correct.
in the village.
Right, the only issue is that it's now a point source. There's a discharge point
So
from
it's-
a basin.
But it's going into the existing, or what, I'll say existing because it's currently being constructed.
Yes.
Existing collection system within that proposed subdivision.
So I guess the way I
Oh,
read the
okay.
letter is that the approved subdivision didn't include the improvements. and
Right.
that's why
Well,
you're
it
saying.
wouldn't have
So-
because we weren't there at that point.
Right, so I think that's the question. Did the original subdivision in the village
I-
have some
My
kind of
understanding was
drain
it
pipe shown?
was, that there was already existing drainage infrastructure. However, I don't have that with me, that filed map, so I'd have to verify
In the
that.
village, there was proposed infrastructure in that street. That's what it was. There's 2 catch basins at the end.
So you were showing
Hmm?
2 catch basins and a pipe, or?
On the village plan doesn't have our plan. It was filed before we were here.
No, I think you guys were here, but then you kind of
Yeah,
went
but
off, and
They
then
were already done.
they were doing their own thing.
Correct, correct. They were filed and done, I think, in 2020. We were in the middle of design.
Yes.
So their map would have never showed our pipe. But there's an easement that's been established in order to transmit utilities, because power, electric's going to go up that road, and it's going to cross into the town. The sewer is being extended up that road, going into our parcel. And so the drainage, it's just another utility. That's covered within the easement. I don't understand why we would go back to the village planning board when it's nothing than a drainage pipe that's been reviewed by this board under SECRA. It's a utility.
Well, under seeker is one thing, but we can't approve a drainage pipe in another municipality.
Exactly. It should go to the Department of Public Works. And I'm not even sure about that, because the village has come on the record and said they don't want anything to do with the road.
So,
One thing that you were mentioning, that easement, and we were supposed to have a copy of that easement as well.
I have it here, but even
Okay. Well,
regardless of the
just-
easement.
That's something that should perhaps be added in, at least as a condition, that we have that before any final approval. But going back to what you were saying, the issue is that the village is saying the planning board has some authority over this drainage pipe that's within their municipality.
Yeah, so I can't as a member of the town planning board, say that Village of Monroe, you're wrong. I mean, that's not our place. And
not
so,
saying.
so there are two ways we could proceed. One is that we wait until it's resolved, which I don't think we want to do. So the second is to put it in there, and maybe say as necessary, or something that says you're out of you'll get your preliminary approval from us, go forward with your plans, for your realty subdivision, et cetera, and that by the time you come back for final subdivision, however it needs to be address it with the village. Because we can't get in the middle of that. We have no jurisdiction over what the village determines. They're telling us that you do. It's not our place to say you do or you don't. We would just like to move forward with our part of our piece of the
agree.
puzzle.
I just disagree with the letter that doesn't quote where in the law it says we have to, and at the same time saying that we don't want anything to do with what you're doing there, but we're
Yeah.
still going to require you to do it.
I do think, though, it's two different aspects in the sense that one is site improvement versus, ownership or dedication of the road. So there is, I think, a difference there, that even if it's not going to be a village improvement, that improvements in general could be subject to their approval, but
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying discard the village. I'm saying I think it goes to a different department. Just like all the drainage on Scunnamunk that's being proposed through the village and the DOT, that's not going to the planning board. That's going through the village DPW, which they've reviewed that and they've signed off on that plan. They're in agreement with it.
But this is the filed map I have.
Yes.
Where, there's catch basin shown somewhere? Oops, what happened here? Hold on. Next sheet. I don't know if the two sheets were filed or if it's one. We'll see. This one? Here? You want me to zoom in on a particular area? Like here? You have seepage pits and catch basin. Yep. Lines here, are these water or sewer?
Water services, and then there's the sewer main that extends up. And that's what you'll see 200, 300, and then there's the sewer manhole there.
So, is there anything in the language? All right, so before this table, it says, should any of the listed agencies require changes to the plans, amended subdivision review and approval from the planning board may be required. Let me see here.
what if you put, so where it says, no final approval of the subdivision shall be granted until all such approvals are obtained or to the extent necessary, or until the obtaining of such approvals is made a condition precedent?
This is preliminary. You'll have to come back for final.
Anyway, right.
There'll be another final resolution anyway.
Right. So, and we're saying
Now and then,
to the extent necessary, so that you get your preliminary approval, you can do your other, get your other agencies' permits, your SWIP, whatever's needed, and between now and when you come back, we'll try and address this.
I'm not an optimist. We've met with the village, it's got to be 5 or 6 times now, and the letters just keep getting longer. I just don't want to get stuck into a point where it never gets solved and it's in this resolution and it's undoable. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, so I think what we ultimately want is, again, from our perspective, our jurisdiction, we have no more review. But again, we can't control what an outside jurisdiction may indicate is their approval. And
Control what your resolution requires for approvals, which we're not sure that we even need to go there.
well, that's why we're saying all such approvals are obtained to the extent necessary. So we want to put something in there to acknowledge that you may not need an approval. All such approvals are obtained, we could say, comma, as necessary.
I just don't want to get stuck with the village saying their position is we have to go back no matter what. And you're in your position where you can't refute that, and we're just stuck. Go ahead.
And we say Village of Monroe Planning Board or other applicable agency? Because you said it may be a DPW thing.
Public Works.
Would that be okay to say and/or other applicable agency? Because ultimately, it's their call. It's
That's what I mean, and
right.
they're not relinquishing.
Or other applicable village agency or department? Or board or department, maybe? Department?
It would fall under
Or
probably DPW. That's the only other department.
With our luck, it'd be some other departments or other applicable village department. Yeah, so we're saying we don't know who it is, so it could be the DPW. I don't want to say DPW and then for some strange
Yeah,
reason they
or-
say somewhere else.
Should you say board or department? Or, I mean, would it potentially be another,
Authorized.
Or other
agency.
authorized. Agency might be better because it could be like the building inspector in theory, right?
Okay. Yeah, could we,
Uh-oh.
Oh, hold on. That's why we have a reverse button. Let me go back.
would it be possible to just remove Village of Monroe Planning Board and just put applicable authorized village department that would review the drainage infrastructure and improvements? And that way, we'll go to the village, let them decide who's going to do it. It could be the planning board, it could be Public Works, it could be the building department. It could be any of them. Department/board.
How do you feel about that? Are we kind of negating?
yeah, I mean, I think we've been told that it's I think it would have the same effect to say Village of Monroe Planning Board and/or other authorized village agency.
Because we're saying or, so it doesn't have to be. But I think in saying planning board, we're not discrediting the fact that they've sent us letters. I would like to be in a better place, in a different place, and have this resolved. But,
Do what we've tried.
yeah, so we're in a place where we have a letter saying they need this. And so I don't want to approve it and ignore that. So, but I also understand your position that there may be a difference of opinion of who ultimately has to grant the approval. And so that's why I think it's reasonable to include and/or other authorized village agency, if the planning board members feel that's appropriate, as well. So,
Some of the background, just so you know, I mean, some of you are aware, we've met with them over 5 or 6 times over the last year and a half. And it first started out that, the map is incorrect, it was never approved, then we proved to them that it was approved and filed by the village planning board, then it was, well, it was never supposed to be a through road. We got the planning board minutes, they stated it was going to be a through road, the planning board was happy about that, we showed that to the village, then the letter changed again to say, now we don't want it, so you can't build it, but the applicant had already filed bonds and inspection fees to build the road. The village tried to take those away when they couldn't take those away.
right.
So
And for the record, be aware that we're under a time constraint at this point, because once the public hearing is closed, we have to make a decision within 62 days. And so we can't let this stay open indefinitely until this gets resolved, because it may never get resolved. All we can do is take the action that we need to take because we're in a 62-day time period. So there is no basis at this point. There's a basis to condition it on getting other approval since it's preliminary. There isn't a basis to deny it. So,
and I think that
and frankly,
language is fair.
if this is a problem, you could come back as part of final and do what you said, an alternate,
We'll come up with something, yes.
some alternate discharge.
Because I believe by that time, the DOT will have approved the other improvement project on Sconnemonk.
Yeah.
That'll be done.
Right, so there are options to not have to go through that subdivision if you had to. Whether you want to or not, I mean, that's what can happen between now and final.
I had a discussion with other agencies from the village, and they told me there is not a problem to put a pipe over there if we have an easement, and we did not have to go to a planning board.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to see if I have it in writing, so we have something.
Do you have that? Yeah. And so I think if we have that in writing, then that's that. So, all right. So I think we've beaten this one.
Bonnie, just before you move off the chart, the last one for DEC for stormwater, I had just struck notice of intent and made that general permit coverage.
General construction.
Right.
Right.
DOT? Well,
Does DOT have to approve anything with your?
it is, but I think we've already sent it to them. So we'll send it again.
Yeah, I mean, you may tie in, but do you need their actual approval? I don't think so. Right? There was no
But it's
approval from DOT. We studied the traffic.
We've already sent it to DOT. They came back with a letter that says that they didn't believe that to be an impact.
Right.
But to keep them informed.
But this is under approval, so I would be concerned about listing an agency that doesn't have an approval, and then you have.
Bringing it up just
Yeah.
so.
I appreciate
You
that.
shouldn't want to add things.
I never want to add things, but I also don't want to get caught at the end.
I mean, there is always, though, the standard general condition that requires any outside.
Actually, we should add, should we add town board?
I was wondering that, but for the road,
Well,
that's not going to be until
That's
after.
preliminary.
I think it's already
that can be
listed.
either town, well, the other thing I was thinking about was a conservation easement.
I think that's already listed.
There is this
Another
condition
specific
about,
condition?
about
Okay.
entering in that. But I do think we need to add something about the access, because there's an easement that gives them access now currently from Sconnemonk to the property, because otherwise they wouldn't have access over that private road. So that's something, you said you have that with you?
An approval, or?
I was going
is
to say a
this
condition, just to reference that,
So-
prior to final, that there has to be,
Okay, so we don't need it in the
not in
approval
that
table?
section, just elsewhere in the resolution.
Okay. All right, so let's continue on down here, and then we'll remember to add that as necessary. Applicant shall copy the planning board and all correspondence with any of the agencies listed above. Any amendment to the existing plan set must, before submission to any of the agencies listed, be approved by the planning board's consultants. Road improvements, prior to final approval, applicant shall enter into agreement with the town of Monroe to convey to the town the proposed access road in the village of Monroe should the village decline to accept dedication of such roadway. Such agreement shall be in a form acceptable to the town of Monroe attorney. Is that town of Monroe town board attorney, or on the agreement? 6. Meaning the town,
The town of Monroe,
I
yeah, I
guess,
think it would just be the town attorney,
town board attorney?
or just town attorney.
Okay. Okay. Applicant shall install a do not block intersection sign and pavement markings on Scunamunk Street at the intersection with the new access road to delineate the area of the intersection to remain clear. This requirement shall be reflected on the plat, and such sign and markings must be completed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Applicant should write on the plat, on the final plat. That comes in, right? The pavement markings will be on the final plat before we sign it. Okay. And then they have to actually be completed prior to the issuance of a C of O. Applicant shall coordinate with adjacent owners at where the access road intersects with Scunamunk Street to remove, relocate vegetation, improve site distance to satisfaction of the planning board's traffic consultant, AKRF.
Should that also on the,
As a note? Or is the vegetation shown to be removed?
I know, has it been,
Some trees was already removed, which was on our property. So we still need to do from the right side, which we have an agreement, and the left side, we need to see if we still need to do something, maybe 1 or 2 more.
Do we have sign-offs from those owners that they'll do it? In other words, what happens if they don't agree? Suddenly they say, we don't want, well, too bad, we don't want to. What happens?
my understanding was they were all in the right-of-way.
It's in the right-of-way,
Oh, so they don't have a say.
correct. We're just being diplomatic about it.
And then I think you're going to replace the vegetation, no? Or put some, were you putting
If that's
something in?
what the
If they wanted that?
homeowners wanted that,
Okay.
we would supplant it behind the right-of-way line.
Okay. So to remove, relocate, replant.
On. Copy so I can put it in the file.
Prior to the signing of the plat, applicant shall execute a restrictive covenant requiring compliance with the tree plan and the town of Monroe preservation law. Shall be filed in the Orange County Clerk's office simultaneously with the plat, and proof of such filing provided to the building department.
these are things that will be carried over into any ultimate final approval, but they were,
Good to know now so that you know what's going to be required at final. Applicant shall comply with the DEC tree removal restriction, reflect as a map note prior to signing the plat. Prior to final approval, applicant shall obtain the ruling of the town board as to whether it's willing to serve as grantee of the conservation easement. Ongoing maintenance shall be established at the time of final approval. That, ongoing maintenance standards, that'll be part of the conservation easement? Is that normally part of a conservation
Yes,
easement?
that's something that's required under the cluster regulations for the conservation easement. They're supposed to be established by the planning board and then put into the.
One comment that keeps appearing in the memos, and that's the requirement of the baseline study, which we have responded to numerous times, that we feel that it's not necessary.
And a baseline study as far as
The habitat,
For the
so
habitat.
that,
they want the habitat map so that there's some,
so that when there's monitoring done, that there's a baseline to compare it to.
so we don't have that already with Mr. Bates' report?
That's what we're saying. It's our opinion that the existing conditions have already been inventoried, and the development of the landscaping plan and the conservation plan satisfy that. And the comment keeps reappearing. So I just don't want to have that lingering
It's
out there
my
again.
understanding, I think that your consultant was requesting more for that baseline.
So what ecological analysis and Esposito Associates have done, they've responded several times back to that comment, saying it's already been inventoried, it's on the landscaping plan. And then we also prepared the mitigation and habitat plan that went with our last response back. And Karen Aaron has already reviewed and signed off on everything that's there as well. So we don't see the reason to do a baseline study when we already know what's there.
So I think we could just say something like, prior to final approval, the planning board will ensure.
At the end of there, to the satisfaction, so the applicant must address all outstanding issues raised by CHA to the satisfaction of the planning board?
Yeah, so that we can just go through it, and if we are okay with the baseline, then we don't, yeah. So I could tell you that, so when you do your conservation easement, you'll need conservation easement markers. And often, so what Dave Tompkins is probably referring to is what they do in Shongum. He's on their environmental management council up there. And so there's a report, and what they do is, at the time that they're installing the easement markers, they actually take a picture. They take a picture to see what the environment is there, because the whole point is to ensure that none of the homeowners encroach into the conservation easement area. So it's a simple report, but it's just to have something that when someone goes to enforce or check to see if it's being maintained, that they have pictures to see what it looks
look like, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, to me, that's what would be what can be done. We're not talking about a full baseline, look at the entire easement, all the habitat. It's, let's show on a map. So what they do is they show on an aerial map the locations of the easement markers, and then you'll say photo 6 looking east, photo 7
Okay.
looking west, and then you have a series of photos. So
Yeah, that-
I think that's something that can be easily done.
Yeah, that can be. The way that the comment is written, it's like a full-blown.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can show you what has been submitted for Shongum before. Okay. Applicant shall record a conservation easement that will limit development on the unencumbered lands, consistent with the goals of the town code. Limits of the conservation easement area shall be marked with the permanent markers. And so there's the submit a conservation easement baseline report. And that's what I'm referring to, which I think can serve a lot of that, what's being requested. Public improvement security agreement. So we need a schedule here. Prior to signing of the plat, applicant shall execute a public improvement security agreement in a form acceptable. So we need the schedule of improvements, right? And the costs to be able to bond. Is that what the schedule is?
So typically, the way I do it in other towns is we have a standard spreadsheet
Right.
that everyone uses the same unit costs,
Right.
and they just plug in their quantities.
Right. So we don't have the schedule at this point, so prior to the signing of the plat.
I believe your subdivision regulations require you to set the schedule as a condition.
You could just add to that, take out, and just at the end say, public improvement security agreement and schedule, which shall be provided for review. Schedule and costs, or however you want to put that there.
Normally, there's a schedule. You
Schedule will-
It'll be
prepare
as
it,
a
and
part
then
of
you
final
approve
rev-
it.
As you could put
They'll
as
prepare
part
it,
of
we'll approve it.
final
Right.
approval.
Yep. So public improvement schedule, which shall be approved by the planning board
Pursuant
engineer.
to a schedule. I can't see what you're changing.
I have, and public improvement schedule, which shall be approved by the planning board engineer? Can you, you can't see over there.
Shall be approved by the planning board.
Oh, you had something different?
So it should be set by the planning board, so it'll have to be set in your final approval resolution schedule.
Okay.
So, yeah, the agreement shall ensure completion and maintenance of all public improvements identified above pursuant to a schedule
Pursuant to a schedule to be submitted.
established prior to, at final approval, at the time of final approval, which shall be incorporated into the public security agreement.
Submitted prior to final approval.
A schedule established at the time of final approval. Does that make sense? And then it'll be part of the final approval resolution.
Considered as part of.
Shall be incorporated into the public improvement security agreement, and which shall be approved by the planning board engineer. And which schedule shall be approved.
All public improvements identified above pursuant to a schedule established at the time of final approval upon recommendation of the planning board engineer. Which shall be,
All right, you'll get us the final language.
yeah, if you send me yours, because some of yours I think I had missed, so,
Okay.
yes.
I know what we're trying to say. So for the benefit of the planning board members, the improvements that are dedicated to the town, the curbs, the road, the pavement, all of that, there's a bond established to ensure that it actually gets done. And so there's a schedule, which is what our engineer described, which is, let's say there's 3,000 feet of curbing. For each unit of curbing, there's a cost that's put into the schedule. Town engineer looks at it to say, this makes sense, this is reasonable, and then a bond is established. So for whatever reason, if the work isn't done, then we can call the bond and the town makes sure it gets done. So that's the purpose of the public bond. So anytime you have public improvements, you have one of these schedules. There's a name for the schedules, but I'm not thinking.
Bond estimate.
Bond estimate, yeah. So that's what this is, which is really before final, but this is kind of our checklist to get us to final. And we're just trying to get the language right. Okay, prior to signing the plat, applicant shall furnish performance security, restoration security, inspection fees, maintenance guarantees, et cetera. Tree plan. Applicant shall complete all improvements required by the terms of the public improvement security agreement. So those are all the improvements that have to be done that are within the public right-of-way. Okay, stormwater drainage. Are they creating a drainage district? Or it's just an agreement? Does the town have drainage districts?
Town's taking over part of the road.
Should we
Probably
say the town board shall advise the planning board as to whether a drainage district shall be formed?
So required shall be formed prior to signature of the plat.
You think we need to say something about the drainage district?
Adding in at the end of that number 19, notwithstanding the foregoing, should the town board determine a drainage district is required, such district shall be established prior to signing of the.
And notwithstanding the foregoing, should the town board determine that a drainage district shall be established?
Shall
Should
be established,
such district shall be established prior to the signing of the final plat? Or to determine that drainage district shall be created? Said district shall be established prior to the sign. Should the town board, I think, require that a drainage district be created?
should the town board determine that a drainage district is required, shall be established prior.
Got it. Okay. 20,
The only one I'd like to add under this is there are private stormwater facilities, so there should be some type of stormwater management agreement between town homeowners.
Be covered under 19.
That would be the
19 mentioned the maintenance easement.
Right, but what's requiring the homeowners to maintain it? Or can we just add language to that effect of 19?
Yeah, that'll be binding on all subsequent landowners. And it's recorded as a deed.
Okay.
okay. Parkland fees, prior to signing the final plat, applicant shall deliver payment of a fee in lieu of parkland. Send payment shall be in a cashier's check or certified check, so that's just in whatever, in accordance with the fee schedule. And then there's a whole set of general conditions.
Highlighted at the bottom, the last general condition, because it's different than your standard timelines for expiration, and this is a 6 months after the date of the resolution, but it can be extended.
Okay.
There is one condition we will have to add about the access. So this easement agreement does presently expire the end of the year if it's, I believe, if you don't start improvements. So
Where do we add that?
prior to, I'd say probably at the top, just because it doesn't fall under any of the other headings. So maybe as a,
Not under the general conditions?
no, up, if you go to page 8,
Okay. Not under other agency approvals? Oh, prior to final specific
yeah,
conditions?
one of the, number 2, actually, because it'll be prior to final approval.
Signing of the plat?
I think prior to final approval, because if there's an access issue, you need to have that resolved. So prior to final approval. Provide proof of access to Scunny Street via an easement over the private road, or in the event the road becomes public.
Potomac Street?
It's road and then street.
So shall provide proof of evidence, Scunnamunk Street, via an easement? Or what was the language?
By way of an easement over the private roadway, or by demonstrating has become a public road.
Okay. You know that's in there, so they have to in some way. Okay. All right, so with those changes, would someone please make a motion that we approve the resolution for DG Realty Management LLC preliminary major subdivision, subject to the amendments we discussed this evening? It was a tie. I think it was Pat, though, I think. Yes. Would someone second, please?
Second.
Oh, Nick beat Jeff now.
It's fun.
Pat made the motion.
Pat and then
Nick.
Nick. Roll call?
Bonnie Franson.
Aye.
Jeff Manson.
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
Dylan Penn.
Aye.
Luis Rivera. Thank you.
Right, motion carries. You have a preliminary approval.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Very painful.
Thank you, guys. Been a long road, but thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Next month.
There you go. Hey,
I'm
why
not sure what you were
never
all
know.
talking about. That seemed pretty easy to me today.
See this white patch?
That's all from DG Management.
That's all from Lipa.
Bonnie, can you send me that
thank
you.
version? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
What? Times you sent me that thing.
Right. Next item on the agenda is Mountain View Shul, 277 Mountain View Avenue, Monroe, New York. You're back.
Good evening again. You can't get rid of me that fast. Just for the record, John Queenan from Lankin Tully, engineer for the applicant. Also with me is Isaac Walter, applicant's representative.
Okay.
We're back before you, the returning project for the proposed Mountain View Shul, located at 277 Mountain View Drive. We were last before you, I believe it was in May or June, I think it was May, where we went over the sketch plan that we had for the construction of a new shul to replace the existing shul at the property. We've made some changes to the maps per Sean's prior comment memo. We've included now erosion and sediment controls, a grading plan, a little more detail on the parking and the retaining walls necessary. And I think at this point, where we'd like to go over with the planning board, any other questions, we've outlined the waivers that we're seeking as part of the application for the shul that are allowable under the code for the board to consider. And I think we were talking last about possibly having a site walk with the board. I'd like to do that as soon as we could, because then based on that, I could finish up any changes and the landscaping plan.
And then I'd like, maybe Karen can come out for a walk with us. Huh?
I haven't seen her in years, so that's,
No,
that's
yeah.
fine.
Now, she did Monroe Commons, she walked with us, and I think another.
Tony Allison.
Did you? I don't remember seeing it. Maybe. Did you?
Did I send it? Okay. Like, Isaac asked me to, and I'm like, I did, and he's like, any answer? I'm like, nobody answered me.
So, when is everybody good, generally?
Well, if you do it all together, I have to post it as a meeting.
Well, not if you don't
Not if-
discuss
Right.
Okay.
amongst
Just make it
yourselves.
safe so I don't have to post.
So as long as, the applicant could show you, point out where things are going, you could take a look, but.
So Ashley and Sean, you'd want to go too? Yeah? So, well, we need to figure out when Karen can get here. But she can go at another time if she really needs to. Today is the 8th. I have no meeting miraculously on the 13th. How would like the 13th, so like 4 or 5 o'clock? Okay. How about the 14th? How about the 15th? I actually have a suffer meeting. It's not in here. Sundays? Did you say Sundays? I don't know if you're.
If we could do it earlier in the, if,
I don't know if I know you want to be there together, but you could do it in two
Yeah, we could.
groupings or.
Yeah, maybe let's shoot for one day, and then if everybody can't make it, then we can always schedule a second. You're what?
I'm available later,
Later, right.
like 5 on or on the weekends earlier.
Okay.
I can, if you want to do a block, I can.
Okay.
Start at
Arrive a
4
little
and you
later.
arrive
It's
at
not a
5,
big
I can
site.
still- I can still
Because it's not a
take
big site. Yeah.
That's
but what
acre.
about the 13th at 4?
You want to start at 4, and then as you guys arrive, you can come at 5? Would that work?
fine.
On the 13th?
That works for me.
Yeah, I got
13?
nothing there.
13th?
I'm not available next week.
Oh, you're not available, okay. Would you be available the 13th? We can set up a separate time for you if you want to get out there. Yeah, you would go to the site. So John will be there for a block of time, so if you have to get there later, he'll be there. Yeah? And if it doesn't work, we could figure out maybe a time that you and Dylan can go together.
Yeah, and if,
And then I don't know, Bob, when he returns, he may want to go.
October.
Oh, okay, well.
yeah, like I said, if there's another date that works, then I'll meet you there, that's fine.
So right now, we're talking about the 13th at 4 to like 6. And whoever can show up will be there. So maybe you guys want to organize, if you want to be there at 5 or 5:30 together to walk it together, you could do that. Yeah,
Yeah, we're talking about 5. If
Okay.
anyone else wants to join us at 5,
okay.
more than welcome.
I know you had to come a little earlier, right? Yeah.
At 4.
Right, no, so we're talking about 4 for a group of us and then 5 for a later group. And then you could do 5? Okay, so you'll be there at the same time. Jeff and Nick will be there, and then Dylan will figure out a separate time for you if you want to get out there. Okay, so that takes care of that. Is that it? It's a
Yeah,
wrap.
from our end, yeah.
Is there, so then let me ask Sean, was there any new submission or no?
There was.
To August. Do you have comments for the new submission?
I do. I'll try to just touch on, we know there's a lot of outside agency approvals, water main, sewer main. I just want to touch on the uses. So the new shul's 3 stories plus a basement. There's an existing shul there. Last time, I think you said that is not being proposed to be utilized as a shul. And that's still remaining, right? Because it was unclear on the plans whether or not what the use was.
It'll be used as
Okay.
So you could add on there that it would be storage that's accessory to the shul, correct?
I have your comments up, Sean. Square footage of existing residential dwelling?
There's a note on the plan that says existing shul building to remain.
There is? Okay.
Yeah, it might be
You
better
could
on
just-
sheet
yeah,
1.
just add that it's accessory storage,
Okay.
so that it's not a new,
Storage
for-
building.
Yeah.
Self-storage.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so with regards to the single-family dwelling, that was not calculated in the floor area ratio, so that will make your request for the increase beyond what's permitted by the special use permit, go
Didn't
higher.
include it. The FAR included the existing shul and then the proposed shuls.
Right, but the single-family dwelling should be included in that.
The floor area ratio shall apply to all principal and accessory buildings and structures applicable to the use.
We'll include, we're already requesting the waiver
Thank you.
over.
Right, so it's making your waiver more.
Correct.
Yeah. We talked about the extension from Curious Jewel Water, and sprinklers will likely be required in the shul, and just review whether or not a fire hydrant is going to be necessary for that. Talked about that path that goes to Carlsberg Road. You've noted improvements, namely stairs and a small sidewalk, we'll call it, on the top, but it didn't appear to connect all the way to the edge of the property. Probably the next one.
What topo is going on here?
Turn on more layers.
It works.
So the top there is
I heard the voice say in the mic.
Top is about 900, and the beginning of the parking lot is in 886. So about a 14-foot drop.
Right, so my question was, how is ADA met on that?
I don't think-
How does it apply or not apply?
I don't think it applies because we're providing ADA parking, so that would be the accessible route to the building. And it's my understanding that not every pathway has to be ADA compliant.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's something we can definitely look into. Sure.
So, we have our 2 ADA parking spaces there in the left-hand corner with the ramp that'll lead into the building. So that would be our compliance.
We're gonna need to figure out a place to put plantings around this building.
I think the site walk is
Is useful.
the next thing before we really finish
Yeah.
this up.
We may need to put some places in here.
Next question I had was disturbance, proposed disturbance.
Close. And it's going to be dedicated on just shy of an acre,
Just shy.
like 40,000. So that's why, again, I think I wrote in my letter back to you that,
Is it 43559?
But let me
40. So we're like 3,000
But
shy.
let me ask you, what does that include the disturbance for the water and sewer main?
Yes. Yes, because I think if you go to the erosion sheet, I've included those trenches and stuff.
Well, I didn't see the water main, where the water main's coming from, so.
Water main is already on the site. It's in the site. It's servicing the
Oh.
Shul building.
Okay.
So we're
When
just.
when was that installed?
When did you do that? 2019?
Health Department approval.
So that's not on the existing, is it on the existing, is that this? That's a wood frame building here? Here? Diagonal. Oh, here.
So 2 questions. What size main is that? Because sprinklers are going to be required, I would imagine that you'll need
6.
at least a 6.
I think it is a 6.
And then secondly, if a fire hydrant's required, you're going to need health department approval.
That well line goes like, does it just skim that existing well?
It's main. The well isn't used. It's water main from the village.
Understood, but is that, so you also have a well casing there. Is it that close to the well casing? Okay.
Initially, they were going to use the well for the water, and then they secured the water from the village. Septic field that is there. Property will connect. Sewer main extension coming up Mountain View Drive.
But just my suggestion was at a minimum that the septic tank be removed from the property instead of abandoned. For everybody's edification down in the street. Main extension. Sanitary manhole. Oh, that's it.
Oh, that's
right
it.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And question regarding grading, it looked like the grading was clear through the parking lot, but beyond the edge of curb, it was unclear to me how the grading ties in. I understand you got basically retaining wall around the whole thing, but take a look and make eyes in.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, we can extend, it'll extend.
Right. And then and make sure you've got top and bottom of wall elevations on that. And I just would like the proposed improvements within the town's right-of-way to be looked at by the highway superintendent and county planning. I had a note from last time that it would be referred once the landscaping and lighting plan's been prepared, which obviously you're waiting on the site visit, so that's all I had.
We have ARB review on this? Okay. Did you submit anything yet or not yet?
We just submitted a basic floor plan.
Submit actually what the building's going to look like?
No.
Okay, so we'll need to see that at some point. Ashley, your comments?
So, for purposes of seeker, you did circulate a lead agency notice in June, so if there's been no objections received, you can assume lead agency tonight. Ultimately, you'll need to hold a public hearing on the special use permit. I think everything else was previous. One question, if you could add, John, on sheet 1, the residential parking requirements, so you have it on sheet 3, but it's not in the parking table on sheet 1, so just to make that consistent. And I think, too, the most recent deed isn't the deed that's cited on that sheet. Check that. So, really, for purposes of seeker, I know you're waiting site visit to landscaping, and the landscaping is going to be needed to address the waivers that have been requested. So tonight you can assume by motion, and then
Board members, do you have any comments on the plan at this point? Nope. Nope.
No.
Nope. Okay. Would someone make a motion that the Monroe Planning Board assume lead agency status for this proposed action?
I'll make that motion.
Noreen isn't here, so I guess I should maybe hold off. Well, who would second? Jeff made the motion. Second?
Second.
Nick seconded? Okay, here she comes. So we just made a motion, that's okay, to assume lead agency status. And Jeff made the motion, and Nick seconded it. And so we need a roll call, or a vote.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
Jeff Manson.
Aye.
Connie Franson.
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Dylan Penn.
Aye.
Luis Rivera. Thank you.
All right, so that means that we are now officially the lead agency who does the environmental review for the project of all the agencies. So I think that's it for this evening, and then we will see you next week.
Yes.
So I think it's mentioned in Sean's memo, but for seeker, the water, I think you said you have an agreement with the village already, so we'll need that or well-served letter in order to complete that.
And so if you would see if Karen is available that day, you could do that, Sean? And then Ward, I don't know if you heard the date that we're going to go out there. I don't know if you want to come out on the 13th, did we say? 13th between 4 and 6. We'll be at the Mountain View Shul site. Do you have a plan for the MCC? Do we have extra plans, Noreen? Okay.
Not the landscape, so you'll want, once the landscaping plan is
We'll
submitted,
give it to
yeah.
him, yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, too. Okay, next item on the agenda is BJ Site Plan, Harriman Business Park. And Mr. Manson will step down. He's recused from review of this application. Good evening.
Evening. George Lithgow, Chicago Woods and Gubitz, attorneys for the applicant. With me is Pat Smith, and Chirag Thakar is background for the.
So at this point, the applicant has requested that we issue a negative declaration. We do have a draft resolution for that, as well as an approval resolution. We did appoint new planning board members, so we do have a quorum to conduct business because Jeff's recused himself. That was an issue we had previously. So why don't you give us a status update? We never heard from Harriman, correct, on the water?
Correct.
Okay.
What we've done is produced an estimate of the current water use in Harriman Business Park. We are entitled to 210,000 gallons of water pursuant to the water agreement. And I think Sean's also been evaluating that independently. And I think we're roughly about 192 at the moment. And I calculate that included both of the proposed uses. And I think there's a substantial contingency, so water should not be an issue.
All right. We did receive landscaping comments today from Cala. Did you receive those?
Did receive it. At it.
We can comply with that letter, the memo from today.
Okay, so you don't take exception to it?
We do not.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to incorporate that into any resolution.
Bonnie, there were, George, did you have people on Zoom?
A couple of people who are. Stantec is on, I think, as well.
Sent it to me. George, is this microphone for use for my computer? George downstairs?
Yes, Bonnie upstairs.
Thank you. We have another George here.
Good night for George's.
Yes. Okay. So I've got that mic on. See if that works. Those that are on the Zoom, can you hear us?
Yes, this is Don Alexander. I can hear you.
Okay, are you able to hear that?
Don is on the next matter, which is Five Below.
Okay. Who do we have here? Is Sam here for BJ's? For Stantec? Okay, you'll need to put your, yeah.
Don't see anyone from Stantec on the screen at the moment.
Okay. All right, so we have that set up. Ashley, did you have any comments, or should we go to the resolutions? Oh, actually, before even, did you have any comment on this? Okay.
I'll just add that I did independently study the water, agreement with the current allocation to all existing users and potential users. I came up with 199,884 gallons per day. Very conservative estimate, in my opinion. So I don't see that this would add, and that includes what's proposed. So I don't see that this would be over the 210.
You, Ashley?
I would just say to start with the negative declaration, and I just realized that I put the date of the action as yesterday, so on the first page there.
Okay. All right, so here's our negative declaration. So this is a termination that the project will not have a significant adverse impact and that an EIS will not be prepared. So notice is issued pursuant to Part 617 of the implementing regulations pertaining to Article 8, which is SECRA of the Environmental Conservation Law. Town of Monroe Planning Board, acting as lead agency in a coordinated review, has determined that the proposed action described below will not have any significant adverse environmental impacts, and a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. So the action is RD Management's and BJ's proposed fueling facility and the fast food restaurant. We're the lead agency. Date of action is today. The seeker status is unlisted. This is not a condition neg deck. There's a brief description of the action and the location, and then our reasons supporting the determination. So impact on land use. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at this? I know I don't know if you're, yeah, okay. So we'll just scroll through this if you want to read it again. Impacts on land use describes, won't change the intensity of the use of the land, impact, or will, but it'll be small. It's in the business park, consistent with the surrounding development patterns. There'll be a SWIP to control stormwater runoff. There is an existing O&R electric easement through the property. O&R has conditionally approved use for the proposed improvements. Impact on community character. And no significant adverse impact. It's a change, but not a significant adverse change. Impact on traffic and transportation. This is a lengthier discussion because we have had AKRF and the applicants had an engineering consultant review the proposed circulation through the site and traffic in general for the new gas station, especially in the fast food restaurant. So no level of service changes. So the first part of this really gets into the actual traffic analysis. And then there was a parking study that was also done because a portion of the parking is being utilized to accommodate the two uses.
Yeah, a portion is not being reduced, so you're able to reduce up to 25% in business parks upon a parking needs study. So they submitted a parking needs study, and I believe it's 20.74%. That, or 0.4.
So does that mean that if there was any future construction, it can't go lower than another, let's say, plus or minus 5%, then a variance would be required? Is that what we're?
It would depend, I guess, where the new use was. So this was specific, the requirements for the BJ store
Okay.
and the new restaurant.
Okay.
So anything would have to be evaluated.
And it is consistent with the comprehensive plan update, which we've said infill is reasonable here because of the fact that parking is underutilized, and that's a trend. Water supply and wastewater. And this was a discussion we just had about the analysis that there's sufficient water to accommodate, especially the new fast food use, impacts on groundwater. So the concern here and what's described is the evaluation of the introduction of especially the gas station within this area on potential groundwater sources. It talks about mechanisms to address any fuel tank leak. And there is a well that's going to be disconnected, and it'll have to be done in accordance with AWWA standards and DEC procedures. Flora and fauna, only species of concern is northern long-eared bat. Otherwise, the site is pretty much built out and previously disturbed. And there'll be adherence to tree plan or tree preservation law. And then drainage was studied. This was a particular issue because there was observations that stormwater was not entering the system or overflowing the system in this area of the site. So that's been addressed as part of the proposed improvements. Impact on human health. Primary concern would be fueling station and their mechanisms in place to address and contain leaks. So that's it for the neg deck. So if no one has any other revisions, I'll make a motion that we approve the negative declaration. May I have a second?
Second.
Pat seconds. Noreen?
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Luis Rivera. Thank you.
With that, the motion carries. And then just let the record reflect that we have one individual who, well, how does it reflect it if there's a recusal in the minutes?
It would be that he was recused or that he abstained.
Okay.
Automatically appear because he was into the vote. So I can either just put president vote, or I can leave it as abstain. And it says that in the minutes.
All right, so we have a resolution in front of us for site plan approval. Introduction and background. So there's a lengthy introduction with regard to the overall approval of the Harriman Common Shopping Center and construction and approval of the BJ's Wholesale Membership Club. So well 4 was never placed in service. Okay, so this goes into the discussion of also relocating the town's 9/11 memorial. And then again, removal of the satellite parking lot to be able to accommodate the BJ's fueling station, which will have 6 pump islands and 12 pumping stations. Property involved, Larkin Drive, and the tax parcels are provided. This is in the LI zoning district and the BPO Business Park Overlay zoning district. Plans, this is a listing of the primary documents submitted in support of the application. So we'll just make this today's date, the 8th. architectural rendering, stormwater water pollution prevention plan, and the preliminary and final major site plan sheets are listed, and then the traffic studies, et cetera. History, date of application on or about November 22, 2021 is when it was filed. We did not hold a public hearing. This is an unlisted action. We coordinated our review and established ourselves as lead agency on January 13th, 2022. And we issued a negative declaration this evening on the 8th of September, 2022. GML, this was referred to the Orange County Planning Department. They had one binding comment with regard to groundwater protection. And we've incorporated the planning department's binding comment by requiring the applicant to comply with the specific conditions of approval, requiring that well decommissioning and sealing be done by an authorized well driller in accordance with best practices, observed by licensed professionals satisfactory to the Village of Harriman, and the underground fuel tanks will be installed in accordance with the procedures described in the Stantec letter of August 2022. They also had 4 advisory comments. Consult with County Health Department and Public Works, include a standard note with regard to tree clearing limits for northern long-eared bat protection, and a SWIP. And that was all given due consideration. So findings, planning board has determined that approval of the site plan will substantially serve public convenience, safety, and welfare, harmonious relationship with existing or permitted development of contiguous lands. We considered the traffic assessment. And we've conducted our architectural review. There are no public improvements that are necessary. Resolution of approval. So we're going to resolve to approve the amended site plan, subject to the following specific conditions. Our approval is subject to final engineering review by our town planning board engineer. Plan shall be revised to address all outstanding comments of the Town and Monroe Conservation Commission and the planning board's landscaping consultant memos of July 14th, 2022 and September 8th. Except where compliance cannot be accomplished due to restrictions of the ONR easement on the property. Plan shall be revised to note that the mesh between the split rail fence around the bioretention pond should be black vinyl coated. Applicant shall add the following map note on the tree plan. Prior to the signing of the plans, applicant shall provide the amended ONR electric easement as depicted on the plans. Prior to the signing of the plans, applicant shall provide, let's go through these and then. Prior to signing of the plans, applicant shall provide a will serve letter from the Village of Harriman, acceptable to town engineer, confirming the village agrees to supply water. Prior to the signing of the plans, applicant shall provide proof of ONR's approval of the improvements within the ONR easement area, and the applicant shall be required to comply with all conditions of such approval. Prior to the removal of the town's 9/11 memorial, applicant shall obtain approval for its removal and relocation from the town board and shall be required to complete installation of it at such location as the town board designates. BJ's fueling facility is only permitted as part of BJ's membership club retail use. Approval of fueling facility shall lapse. Facility shall be decommissioned in the event the BJ's retail use is terminated, unless it's otherwise permitted to continue by a change in zoning or by determination of the building inspector for an equivalent retail membership club use. Prior to issuance of a building permit, applicant shall post with the town clerk a performance and removal bond in an amount recommended by the town engineer to fix and to cover the cost of the removal of the fueling facility and the restoration of the site. Prior to issuance of a building permit for either the fueling station or the restaurant parcel, should we just say or the restaurant? It's not a separate parcel, is it? Oh, was it separate? But it's like a separate lease area? Okay. Orange County Sewer District, that's right. Orange County Sewer District Number 1 must approve the sewer connection for that use. Village of Harriman must approve the water connection for that use. Prior to issuance of building permit for the restaurant use, applicant shall either demonstrate to the satisfaction of the building inspector that the architectural details, colors, and materials of the proposed building and signage conform to the plans presented to the board, or return to the planning board for amended architectural review and approval. That could potentially be amended site plan also, because if it's some particular fast food restaurant that needs a slightly different drive-through layout, parking change, different size building, you're going to have to come back anyway. Right. So should we say that? We don't say it.
That condition specific to the
Architecture,
architectural
right.
elements. I mean, that's kind of inherent in any site plan that's going to change, but
Yeah.
I think it is.
I don't know that we have to. Okay. This.
Cover it elsewhere, nothing can be built unless it conforms to the approved plan.
Disconnection, decommissioning of well 4 shall be in accordance with applicable New York State Department of Health regulations. Are there AWWA standards?
There are. I didn't want to specifically require just that in the event that the village and/or the health department wanted to, since this is being regulated by the Department of Health, I defer to them on
Okay.
that specific abandonment.
And then you have the procedures will be approved anyway by Village of Harriman
Right.
and Orange County Department of Health. Okay. Prior to issuance of a certificate of compliance or C of O, applicants shall demonstrate that the well decommissioning and sealing was completed by an authorized will driller in accordance with best practices, et cetera. That's to comply with our Orange County comment in part. Prior to issuance of a certificate of compliance or certificate of occupancy, applicant shall demonstrate to satisfaction of the building inspector that the underground fuel tanks have been installed in accordance with the procedures described in Stantec Consulting Service, Inc. Safety Features Letter of August 2022.
That's August.
That the installation, inspection, sealing of the tanks, fuel lines, and monitoring equipment has been tested by the contractor, et cetera, et cetera. Prior to issuance of a certificate of compliance or certificate of occupancy, applicant shall demonstrate that the compensatory removal of surplus parking spaces in the main BJ's parking field has been completed in accordance with the approved site plan, and the resulting pervious surface has been suitably stabilized, or if that work is prevented by weather conditions, that a suitable bond has been provided. Prior to issuance of a C of O or certificate of compliance for either use, applicant shall provide the building inspector with proof of acceptance of the sanitary sewer main extension by Orange County Department of Public Works and DEC. Prior to issuance of a C of O for the restaurant use, applicant shall either install the sidewalk between the restaurant and the BJ's fueling facility at the location shown on the site plan, or return to the planning board for approval of any modifications. Continuing condition of approval that any tree clearing activities on the site are limited to the bat protection window between November 1st and March 31st. Stormwater runoff shall be managed by the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, acceptable town engineer. And that in the future, the canopy could have solar panels located atop it. Continuing condition of the BJ's fueling station, that in the event the building inspector determines that additional directional striping of the stacking lanes is required, BJ's shall install such striping within 30 days of receiving notification from the building inspector. It shall be a continuing condition of this approval that the continuing mitigation measures set forth in the board's previously adopted statement of findings for Harriman Commons, together with the 2001 site plan determinations and findings, hereby incorporated as conditions of approval for this site plan. This approval relies upon a drainage study or other evaluations by the planning board based upon the structure sizes shown in the plans. No building permit for a structure larger than is shown in the plans would be issued unless a new drainage study satisfactory to the planning board engineer has been submitted and approved. Site plan allows construction of only that which is shown in the plans identified above. No outdoor amenities or accessory structures or outdoor fixtures, including but not limited to exterior walls, mechanical units, dumpsters, etc., may be constructed, placed, or erected except as shown on the approved site plan without approval of the building inspector or the planning board. And then architectural drawings shall carry certification. And then there's a set of general conditions. So, George, did you have comments?
Minor comments, some moderate comments.
Okay.
Start with the minor comments.
Can we go in order? Can we just go in order? It's
You can
gonna be
go in
easier.
order, sure.
Thanks.
You just want to skip down to comments 5, 6, and 7. We're okay with the requirement. We just think it should be at prior to issuance of the building permit rather than prior to signing of the plans. For a couple of reasons. One, for the comment for the water, we're not going to get a will serve letter from Harriman until we have an actual user identified. We'll get a will serve letter for the BJ's gas station, but we're not going to get a will serve letter for the fast food use until we have one identified. So technically, this would preclude us from doing the BJ's because we'll never have signed plans if it's not conditioned on that.
So we say prior to the signing of the plans for the BJ's facility, but then say for the restaurant, that could come prior to a different point in time?
Prior to the signing of the plans, the applicant shall provide a will serve letter from the Village of Harriman, acceptable to the town engineer, confirming the village agrees to supply water for the proposed BJ's fueling facility. And then, prior to the issuance of a building permit for the restaurant, the applicant shall provide a will serve letter from the Village of Harriman, acceptable to the town engineer, confirming the village agrees to supply water for the proposed restaurant.
So prior to issuance of a building permit? I think it should be building permit.
Building permit.
Okay,
Is that not what?
you may have. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, what was the language again?
The applicant shall provide a will serve letter from the village, prior to the issuance of a building permit for the restaurant, the applicant shall provide a will serve letter from the Village of Harriman, acceptable to the town engineer, confirming the village agrees to supply water for the proposed restaurant.
All right. I'm just going to put a ...
I have it on mine.
And
So it'll be signing of the plans for the fueling facility and then signing, and then building permit for the.
for the restaurant. I prefer to have the O&R sign-offs prior to signing of the plans because for all we know, they may actually request some change or modification, and I don't want the plan signed before they've said, okay, we have to move this, that, or the other thing on the plan.
From our point of view, I'd rather have, if I get a signed plan, it actually does two things for us. One, it addresses your comment, because if it's a signed plan, O&R knows that the board has acted, it's complete, and their opportunity for mischief is greatly limited. And the second reason is, it's going to take a little while to get an easement out of O&R, and if I show them a signed plan, it'll get their attention, because they know that this is the real deal. And that's the reason we would like to wait, have that done, have the sign plan done now, and then have all the O&R conditions satisfied prior to issuing the building permit.
I'm one planning board member. I prefer prior to the signing of the plans. And you're going to have a resolution, so they'll know that they've been approved and that it's time for them to move forward so we can finalize and sign off on the plans.
Right.
So
But
that's where I stand on it.
can't get building permits for anything until we have a signed plan.
Right, but I'd like the signed plan. I don't want to sign a plan in the event O&R is going to change them. So that's why I'd like to get O&R. And frankly, at this point, we should get approval of the improvements within O&R easement area before it's signed. I don't know why we shouldn't get it. Why should it be building permit stage? Why shouldn't it be before I sign a plan?
It's just the timing of it, and we have to do a full O&R. We have to do a new easement with O&R. There is no easement right now, so that could take a little bit of time. We would like to let BJ's go and prepare their building plans and submit them to the building inspector. I don't think he's going to accept them if the plan's not signed.
But how is he going to be able to do that if we're not sure that O&R is okay with the improvements as shown?
That would be at our risk, because if they change the plans, we got to come back to the planning board.
Yeah. Again, I'm one board member. I think it should be done before signing of the plans. That's the way we set it up. I'm okay with the will serve letter. I understand that. You know, because the restaurant use may come sometime later. But you want to build the BJ's facility now. You need the O&R easement, and you need their sign-off now. We've been told that they do consent to these changes, that you've had communications. I, as the chairwoman, would prefer not to sign the plans until we know that they're okay with them as submitted, or that they're going to make modifications before I sign them. So that's where I stand. There are a lot of plans to sign.
There are, but what's really the point? I'm not sure it makes it, I mean, it's a difference to you because you have to sign them. It's
Well,
a difference to us because we're processing.
It's a difference to us because your plans rely heavily on use of an easement area that's been represented, that you're allowed to do that. So I don't see why we can't move forward. You have a resolution and move forward with them without signing of the plans. Now, if you want to submit some kind of letter that says they won't, sign easements, or they won't do final review unless a map is signed, maybe that's a different discussion. But at this point, before signing it, I would like all the modifications made based on whatever O&R's input is going to be provided.
We've made modifications that we believe reflect O&R's requirements.
Okay.
We don't believe there will be more changes. It's possible. We have to deal with a lot of people there. So one way we're able to move forward up to a point, and that point is whether or not we get a building permit. If we can't satisfy the condition before a building permit, we're not constructing anything. So we're able to process, but we can't construct, and that helps us move forward. I'm not understanding why it's necessary. I understand why
I'm not understanding why it's necessary that I have to sign the plans in advance of getting O&R sign-off. You're not telling me that you can't get O&R review or the O&R easement prior to me signing the plan.
No, we're not saying that. What I'm saying is that O&R will be more attentive to moving this forward, knowing that the easement is in place, because knowing that they have a signed plan. And again, I'm not gonna die on the sword on that, but I think it would help us with O&R if we had a signed plan to show them, and that's kind of where we're coming out.
Because the sequence of conversation will go like, do you have a resolution? We say yes. And they'll say, do you have a signed plan?
We don't know that they're going to say that. You
we
have a
don't.
site plan. I think it has to be before signing of the plan, so. George, I'm not changing, so if one of the board members feels differently, but I think it's something we should have before signing of the plans. Why don't we move on just to go through some of the others? So-
that's
On your mic, please.
number 7 is the
Right?
Has to light up. It's not lighting up. Right on top of it.
George said, there you go.
Okay, tell me if I flag, George. So it's the same issue, but we have the same position, which is if the condition requires us to do this before we can get a building permit, we have every incentive to move forward, we have the opportunity to move forward, and we can work with O&R and with more diligence than if we are
You
showing.
have a lot of incentive to do it if it requires that it be provided before signing of the plans. You have even more incentive.
We have the incentive,
We're
they
fully
don't.
incentivized.
Okay, so next condition, the next subject of discussion is number 12. Just a minor note on that, there is no actual approval of a decommissioning plan. well, let's come back to number 9, because that takes a while to discuss.
Number,
Number 12,
okay, so number 12.
that's the decommissioning procedure. It says we must have approval from DOH and the Village of Harriman. There is no formal approval. It's a DEC process. They have set forth the requirements. There is a certified person who does it, and we're going to provide those plans and procedures to the village and to the Department of Health.
So-
They don't approve that, though.
If I could, though, just, the Village of Harriman letter from August of 2021 had specifically requested that the procedure be described and submitted to the Village of Harriman for review and approval. So that's where that had come from.
So for Harriman, we'll approve it, but
Yeah, I mean, whether-
DOH does not, I believe.
Well,
But
I
accepted,
want to step
acceptable.
back, George, because I think you said DEC, and there's no reference to DEC in 12.
DEC is the entity that promulgates the regulations for closing wells. It's a section of the NYCRR.
Are they going to have to prove it?
No,
Oh, okay.
that's the whole point.
But they
There is-
license the well driller.
They tell you how it has to happen. They tell you who has to do it, and they tell you it must be done this way. They don't approve it.
Right, so no, my thing is, it says we have in accordance with all applicable to New York State Department of Health regulations. So should it say Department of Health / Department of Environmental
Yes.
Conservation?
So we will give you a letter that says they accept it, they find it okay, they find it wonderful, but we can't really promise something that's an approval. As long as we all understand that and know what that means, that's okay. But typically, you approve a permit, you approve a plan, you approve something that requires formal action by.
We could just
Can we say
change the-
consent?
How about just Village of Harriman and Department of Health?
Approved by the Village of Harriman and accepted by the Orange County Department of
Or
Health?
accepted by the agency, both agencies. It's just, as long as you don't, I don't want to get hung up on approved, but somewhere along the line, it'll come up.
So Harriman gave us a letter saying approved, so I'd rather leave approved for Village of Harriman, and accepted by Orange County Department of Health, or consented by.
Would it be easier just to reference that letter, that'll be done in accordance with that, with that letter?
Well, we could say, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the procedures to decommission well 4 shall be in accordance with the letter received from the Village of Harriman dated August 4th.
So I don't know that their comment was, we request that the procedure be described and submitted to the Village of Harriman for review and approval. So they weren't identifying a specific procedure. They want to get.
They
whatever
want
the
to
procedure-
approve the
yeah.
procedure.
They already have.
And that's
We're-
fine,
We're
then
down the road
that's
with
just
them. So that's why
submitting-
I have no problem with saying that we'll comply with that letter, because we're already down the road with the village for decommissioning the well. So it's already been approved. We've got a contractor picked. We're ready to roll
Yeah, so
on
then
that.
it's just submitting that approval, some documentation of the approval to the town, and then the
Yeah,
conditions.
if it's already
that's-
been approved,
that's
then
fine.
you've met it. Okay.
So number 14, Stantec, we asked Stantec to confirm the procedure that's described there. They made some changes, and I can read them if you wish.
No. The only change is that Stantec won't be there when the actual systems are tested. The contractor tests them, but Stantec will write the report after they get the test results from the contractor. But we can put in there, if you want to have the building inspector be there when we test it, we're happy to do that. But Stantec will issue the report, and that's what their letter says, but it doesn't say they'll actually be there for the physical inspection when that's done.
How about
They don't sign
change
up for that.
observed to approved by?
I think it says has been tested by the contractor,
That's
right?
correct.
And
then it
observed
says-
by.
And observed by, and it says a licensed professional.
Right, they're not going to be there to actually observe the testing of those systems.
How about approved by instead of observed by?
They'll approve it and they'll issue the report. If you go back to the original findings, it does talk about a report. Before we can get the certificate of occupancy, the building inspector has to get that report from Stantec saying that everything's been done properly. But they're not going to actually physically be on site when the systems get tested. That's not the procedure for how they build these gas stations.
So we'll
No,
change
is it saying
observed
that
to
they will
approved.
be though, or it's saying, because I'm reading their letter, it said that they retained engineers to oversee the decommissioning.
This is,
That's the
It's in
decommissioning
decommissioning.
if the center,
Oh, I'm
if it goes
sorry,
away,
okay.
not when it goes in, though.
So just changing that to approved is okay instead of observed? Okay,
That's fine, yeah.
is that okay? Okay. What's next?
Number 16. Number 16 is a condition which says prior to CO, applicant will provide building inspector with proof of the sewer main extension. In the current design, we don't require a sewer main extension. We have 2 laterals. So I think we do not need that.
Strike DEC,
Strike DEC, but not DPW?
right?
Number 21, it refers to structures. If the structure is larger, I think what that paragraph means is if there is an increase in impervious surface, that would affect drainage. So if there's no increase in impervious surface, there would be no need for further drainage study. So I
How
would
about
just,
if it differs instead of, if anything differs from the drainage study?
if the town engineer requires it, we'll certainly do it.
Can you have the enlargement of a building as opposed to a impervious surface area that could justify the requirement for a new drainage study?
Any increase in impervious surface will require new.
But let's say,
evaluation of this.
but let's say the impervious surface stays the same, but the building gets bigger. Does that change in any way the runoff?
Doesn't change the water quality calculation, and it wouldn't change the peak runoff rate.
So in other words, right now, let's say for argument's sake, on both sites, it's 50% impervious. And they have a 3,000 square foot building for the restaurant. So they decide to go to 5,000 and have a lot less parking. That doesn't necessitate a change to the SWIP or anything else?
I would say no, with the only caveat that if the drainage pattern changed. If that building, larger building, changed the drainage pattern, it would affect the quantity. Could affect the quantity.
Okay.
We'll be coming back for site plan then.
Right.
And this is a standard, this is one of your standard conditions?
Okay.
It's not a big deal, but I think it's more accurate to say impervious surface. But general condition 2, and this is just.
We're not changing our general conditions.
Well, this is saying that there is.
George, we're not changing our general. If you don't need it, then.
Doesn't apply.
It doesn't apply. But this is standard. We're just not going to change it.
Give in on that one.
Thank you. Well, you wanted to go back to 1.
Okay, so we're back to number 9. Number 9 is the.
The biggie you said.
Yes, it's the procedure for what happens if BJ's membership club goes away and forgets to take its gas station. Because remember, this is the process that will take place. Right now, it's a lease condition that they remove it. It's a requirement of their corporate practice that they remove it because it's a potential liability. So they don't want it to sit there, so they'll remove it. And then if they don't, and they don't obey the lease condition, RD can enforce the lease. If they don't.
So from my perspective, I'm not going to rely on corporate or lease agreements. I think we need to rely on something that's related to the town regulations.
So I'll take that up a notch to the state. So DEC, as the way I understand petroleum bulk storage, requires that there's weekly monitoring of underground storage. In the event that BJ's abandons the tanks, that weekly monitoring is not being reported to DEC. Therefore, DEC is going to require that the tanks be mitigated somehow, removed or.
At the little, there should,
Is that now? Okay.
yes.
We don't have a problem with the condition because the gas station, if BJ's is not using the gas station is going to go away. If BJ's doesn't remove it, RD will remove it. Our issue is posting a bond because we're going to be posting a bond for a minimum of 10 years and probably as long as 20 or 25 years. It's going to impact our ability to finance the project going forward. It's a liability that's sitting on the property for something that we're going to take care of. We don't feel there's a need for a bond, and we don't know where in the resolution that comes from, where this requirement is coming from. We never talked about it in the past, and it just sprung to us out of the blue, and it's just not something that we're prepared to do. Something we can't do, because we're talking about a total inability to finance this project going forward, and we have to refinance the project sometime in the next 4 or 5 years. We just can't live with this condition.
So what's the genesis of the condition? What's the background?
So it was when you were, I think it was very early on discussing, how this is a unique situation where gas stations aren't permitted in this district. It's allowed by the building inspector's determination that it is part of the BJ's use, which is not your typical retail use. It's a part of the membership club retail use. And there were discussions on, well, what happens if BJ's leaves, and then there's this gas station there, who's going to be responsible, how are you going to be able to enforce that? You do similar, so for Verizon recently you require them to post, a bond for the removal in that event. The cell tower has to come down. I don't know how much, as a surety bond, how much that would actually be, how much of a financial burden that is. That's the genesis. If the board thinks there's sufficient security elsewhere, whether it's through the DEC monitor or elsewhere comfortable that it won't be an issue, then that's up to the board to modify.
I think the concern is that BJ's goes away and it sits there, abandoned. And while you may have to, I thought that the commitment was to remove all the fueling facility and restore the site. So what we don't want to see is BJ's goes away, someone wants to occupy that area, and that fuel area is left standing, even if the tanks are decommissioned.
Like I said, we have no issue with the condition. It's just the issue of the bond. So we're fully committed to having BJ's remove the gas station, and that's everything. That's the tanks, the piping, the canopy, the dispensers, everything, and put everything back to either grass or paved. And if they don't do it, we're going to do it. There's no issue with that condition. It's just that we can't have a 10-year bond or a 20-year bond just sitting on the property. It's just too much of an encumbrance for a shopping center of this size.
Can we add to it that space, the BJ space, shall not be occupied until such time that it is all removed?
What may happen is BJ's may close the gas station prior to that. So they would still continue to operate, but they would still be responsible to take the gas station away.
BJ's could operate, you're saying, the gas station without having the membership club?
No, they can operate the club. They can operate the wholesale club without the gas
Shut
station.
down if they
can
get rid
shut
of the gas station, but keep the
keep the
store.
membership, right. No, I'm saying that
In that event, so for some reason BJ's doesn't want to live up to their obligations of the lease, we would still be responsible under this condition to remove that gas station if BJ's didn't. So you have all the protections that gas station will be gone. One way or another, that gas station will be gone unless it's operating.
What does the board think? I think it's how do you ensure? Because people will say, well, we'll do this, and then you see vacant gas stations. So I know it's a little different here with RD management and BJ's, but, is there another hook, if you will?
Again, I just add that the DEC is also monitoring that bulk storage permit.
But I think DEC will require that the tanks be removed possibly, but that doesn't make the whole thing go away and be restored. I think, so that's one piece of it. I don't know that's the whole piece.
Understood, yeah.
I understand what your concern. You do see vacant gas stations, but you don't see vacant gas stations at the entrance to shopping centers of this size. This would be this would absolutely destroy the value of the shopping center to have a derelict gas station there. It's just not going to happen. We can't allow that to happen. We've got way too much money, time, sweat, equity invested in the shopping center to have an empty gas station sitting out in front of it. It's just not going to happen.
Just legally bind them to it, you know? They don't have to post bond on it. And it's like, or else, you know? Like,
I mean, we could take it out. It's that now there's not a bond to ensure that it get done if they don't do it. But I'm okay either way, I guess. I don't know. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
We'll probably all be dead when that happens.
Hey, speak for yourself.
is this something that happens, Bonnie? Is this like standard to have the bond?
You
or
know,
do you
I've
always need
seen,
it?
it's, you know, we don't anticipate these things, that's the thing. But have
Yeah.
I seen derelict shopping centers with vacant gas stations? Yes. You know, barely operating? Yes. Because one of the problems is that because now they're having issues with tenants and vacancies, they don't want to spend the money to remove something because they just don't want to spend money. So can it happen? Yes. Is it likely to happen here? Probably not, you know? But having the bond was additional surety that it would get done. And, but the applicant is representing that, you know, basically they can't finance if they have to suddenly bond. I don't know frankly, I don't even know what the amount of a bond would be for removal.
It would be somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. So you're talking about for a center of this size to have this thing sitting out there, because it's going to cost about $100,000.
That would be the
to
cost of the
decommission.
bond or the cost of the removal?
No, that would be the cost of the removal, which we have to have a
bond would
bond
be a
for that,
percent, like a
for probably 150% of that amount. So it's going to be, it's not a cost issue, because we're talking about maybe, you know, a couple $1,000s a year to maintain the bond. It's just having that bond there is going to make it difficult, if not impossible, to refinance a shopping center, because that bond will be senior to any other it's senior because it's there first, and B, it's going to be an issue because it's a never-ending liability. It's not a performance bond where you build out your improvements, you get your bond back. This thing will be there for a minimum of 10 years, and hopefully as long as 20, 25, 30 years. So it's just not something that we're prepared to do.
Well, I guess we understand we're kind of taking a risk with this, but I think it's in there that it is in the resolution that it says that they'll have to remove it. So we would just have to violate them.
For a violation of the...
Yeah, we'll have to
Take 'em to
violate
court.
them and take them to court and do the standard thing. And we'll put in here that all costs shall be paid.
And maybe even to help out, so you're not having to find this in the resolution, perhaps a note on the plans to that effect could be, so that, you know, it's front and center on the site plan rather than buried in the resolution.
That's a good idea. So you could add a note to this effect, to the plan.
Oh, yeah, you can just take that right out of number 9, just without the bond language, and put it right on the site plan. That'd be fine.
Delete the part that says prior to the issuance of a building permit, and in its place, we'll put a map note to this effect shall be added to the plans. Prior to the signing of the plans, a map note to this effect shall be added.
Time for a motion.
Okay. So does everybody understand the revisions that were made this evening? Yes? All right. Who would like to make a motion to approve this application?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second? That was
Right here.
Dylan.
I'll second.
I was trying to kick it down, you know?
Nick seconded. Nick's been on top of his motions tonight. He's killing them. And that's the motion. That's to approve the resolution as amended this evening.
Napoli,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
So I'm struggling with this. So come back to me.
no problem, Pat Shea,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Luis Rivera,
Okay.
Bonnie Franson.
So you have it. Yeah. The reason I struggle with this is, as I've said, I've had a hard time with having both uses there. The two buildings. I feel like we're stuffing too much in that one site. I have no problem approving the BJ's. So I don't know if there's a way that I can make my motion to approve the BJ's and not the restaurant. But, you know,
Can I speak to that? I mean, I understand your concern, and we obviously disagree, but we did take some extraordinary steps in this project. We did our traffic study the week before Christmas. I mean, we were a little concerned too, because it's the entrance to the shopping center. It's a very important piece. So if we were uncomfortable with what the traffic was going to be or the use was going to do to the center, we wouldn't have proposed it. So we got ourselves comfortable before we came to the board. So
Yeah.
for what that's worth, that's my 2 cents.
And my thing is not the traffic, it's the visual, because I feel like
Chick-fil-A.
they're, if Chick-fil-A comes in, they're getting another site plan, and it's not going there, because they have like a gazillion line
No, I'm teasing.
queue that's just not gonna fit there, if you know the Ramsey facility. So, no, it's more about the visual, because I feel like we're taking away more green there, and it was nice the way it was landscaped, so it was a visual thing of having a more upscale landscaped, facility. So having said that, Karen's still involved in the landscaping for it. She does beautiful recommendations, so I'll approve. But it was a struggle.
Again.
Thank you very much.
I have to stay.
All right, we're on HBP. So next item is the HBP 5 below.
Thank you.
America's Best isn't there, is that correct? They are there still? Okay. It was up there. I don't know why it looked like it was closed.
The old Home Goods store?
Burlington,
Oh, okay.
So let the
Yeah.
record reflect that Jeff Manson has rejoined us for this application. Our board member.
so this is very much in the spirit of Burlington. We actually had to make those changes because the architect that inadvertently carried over some of the Burlington numbers. Stan, is Don here? Is Don sorry. George Lithgow, Jacobitz and Gubitz for the applicant, Mike Rossi for the owner, and Don Alexander is on Zoom, I believe.
Oh.
He is the architect.
I'm here.
Okay. Basically, we're looking for ARB approval. It's very similar, very close to the Burlington that was approved in May. And we have provided a sign package showing the existing facade and the proposed facade for 5 below, who would be the tenant.
So Sean, did you have any comments on this?
I did. Just a couple minor things. And I believe George prepared a response. The proposed facade appeared to be jutting out further than the building from what was existing. I understand, based on George's response, that's not the case, and perhaps that's what the new submission is this evening?
Actually, that has not changed, but I do understand what you think you saw, because I thought I saw it as well, that there was a 3D effect for the
Right.
new facade section that would be elevated, but it only goes up, it does not come out.
It does not project, so the footprint does not change, only the
footprint,
height
yeah,
of the facade
correct.
changes. Okay,
But can we just be clear, because this is going where Ulta is, right?
correct. Yep.
So the facade for Ulta does project out from the wall.
But what he's saying, it doesn't
You're saying it's not
project
going farther
further.
than?
Not changing because
Okay,
of this.
gotcha. And the planter staying there? Yes. Okay.
But we're moving the shopping cart.
Targets, you could leave it there.
So then further, I also understand that none of the windows or doors are changing, unlike Burlington. Yep. And then the sign, George did supply an updated architectural plan of the former Ulta Beauty. I understand that to be 76 feet 3 inches in length in the front of the store, which based on the code allows 2 square feet per frontage of the store, which is 152.5 square feet, which the sign which this proposed sign complies with. Lastly, Noreen, thank you for reaching out to County Planning. I understand that County Planning is not required on this project.
The lettering is similar to America's Best, the way it's individual channel letters. It's not one big panel, right? They're individual letters in the, okay.
Should give professional courtesy and let Don speak to that.
Okay. Don, can you speak to the lettering, their individual letters, channel letters?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So we've dealt with this before in terms of the illumination and being very bright white. How do we handle it with Burlington?
So you had a condition on your approval that required the applicant to return to the planning board to adjust the lighting level of the interior lit sign if required within 6 months of the installation. So
Yeah,
If you
because
went-
6,500K is very white, very bright.
So Burlington hasn't been updated yet? The improvements to the Burlington sign, are those done?
Correct, it's still.
I think the way it was left, at least we understood it to be left, is if there is concern about the illumination, we will return and adjust if necessary.
Yeah, I think we have to do that for this because this is 6,500 Kelvin, which is going to be very high. That's a very bright white.
That Burlington was.
Yeah, exactly. So I would want the same condition to be able to adjust if it's like super bright beyond the realm of what the other signs are like.
We don't have to come back unless you go out there and take a look at it.
Yeah, you have to notify the board when it's been installed so that it can be observed, and then they could require you to come back if needed.
Are you going to have any lettering on the canopies, or it's going to be exactly as shown? And then is there lighting under the canopies?
There is lighting, existing lighting underneath there's existing lighting underneath
You have to speak into the mic and let it light up red, so that's how we know we can hear you.
Just speak and the microphone will light up. Close enough.
There is existing lighting underneath the existing canopy, not the awnings, but the canopy, and we're not changing the lighting.
Okay, so it'll be as is.
Correct.
Okay. And then in terms of the colors, it's like kind of a beigey vanilla color on the main part, and maybe this is what you were speaking to before. Sean, that, but it's not, it's flat, because there's different colors on the ends of the Five Below part of the facade.
The parapet does not change, it does not project out any further. It stays on the same plane as is. All we're doing is changing the colors and the EFS score patterns. So if you look at the existing Ulta, behind the sign, there's EFS score patterns. This becomes smooth with just the blue box inset and the different colors on the two ends. But
Okay.
it's on the same plane, and it does not go out any further.
So it's going to be like a salmon-y color at the two ends?
Like a what?
So this is reading that there's one color here, and that there's a little jog down, and that these are two different colors.
Correct. They're different colors.
They are different colors.
Correct. It's as shown in the picture.
So if we're looking up there where, to the right of the Ulta sign, you have the different color canopy there, but that's all going to be
Salmon?
blue?
What would you call that color?
And
Peach?
Yeah, because you don't have that color noted on this, even if it's different, at least on page, section 1, unless I'm missing that. Something looks
don't
off.
see it.
We missed that one color.
I
Honestly,
think what's throwing you is that Ulta was subletted to America's Best, so Five Below is not the full width of Ulta on there.
so there's a little piece of it that's so that's an older,
That's an old
correct.
guy, yeah,
So part of Ulta was made America's Best.
correct, yep.
And so,
So the Ulta, if you look at the Five Below sign, see how it is over top of the smaller canopy that juts out?
mhm.
And look at the Ulta one is only centered on that wider one.
Stretch the canopy on the
I think the
America's Best
canopies
side.
are the same size as the signs just slid over.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that means that the ephes is changing. I don't know.
Only the, what's going to be raised is just centered over the Five Below.
I mean, so I personally like these colors that are there. I don't, the salmon-y color with the beige, I don't think mixed then with the gray and the white. I think that all goes together. Do we need the salmon-y color? And I'm still not understanding how that other, where that drop is, right over here. I'm not understanding where this is happening. You know what I'm saying? To the left, you have the peak, you have the ridge line of the roof where Five Below is, and then it goes down and over. But that's not the way it is now.
That's,
'cause they're
that's old.
raising it.
The Google Street View is old.
Understood.
When they did America's Best, that canopy was modified, so the
Yeah,
columns
she's
are
talking
like-
about the left
Yeah, but-
side.
Yeah, but over here, so even if I'm looking at this.
Right.
Even if I'm looking at this over here, you've got a drop down here. That's what I'm not understanding. You're putting this drop down in there, or no? That's just not,
I think they're saying that's probably what the structure looks like now. Is that
so,
right?
so this top is what the structure looks like. 'Cause
Correct. and
that's
we're
the empty building.
Oh, okay.
So then if you go down, what you're seeing is Five Below added to it,
Yeah.
but then it has these salmon-y colors.
we're
And then
ra-
there's this piece of the roof that's actually, yeah, something's not,
No, we're raising the Five Below parapet 5 feet. So the step you now see is where we're raising it 5 feet. So where you have that beige or cream color, that lower step is the existing elevation. Then we
Okay.
step it up 5 feet to
Okay.
what we're raising
So
5 foot.
you're enlarging that,
We're making it taller. We're bringing it up 5
the
feet higher.
pedestal, okay.
So what we're doing here is we're raising the parapet 5 feet, and we're also changing the colors. We're not changing any projection coming out.
Okay. So,
It's deceiving because it doesn't look like the pillars move out with it. It doesn't show that the Five Below bump out sticks out past the pillar.
It doesn't. So if you use Google Earth and you went down 20 feet and looked at it on an angle, it's gonna be the same projection that you see here. And you can actually, if you wanna, one way to show you that it's not projecting, if you look at the canopy over the door on the left-hand side, there's a little slither there where you see the current projection, and you see it in the street view up there as well. And in both these renderings, it shows the same. What's making it look like it projects out further is just the different colors of the ephes.
so what you're doing is you're not projecting out, but you're going up from this corner, up here,
Correct.
over, and then down.
Correct.
Now, is that within our height requirements? Are we good height-wise?
It is this elevation here.
It's 50 feet in the BP.
Okay.
Okay, so currently it's 25 feet above finished floor. We're raising it to 30 feet above finished floor. And it's actually a foot lower. It'll be roughly half a foot lower than Home Goods, and a quarter of a foot lower than Party City. So
But it's going to be taller than the PetSmart?
it will be, elevation-wise, it will be a foot lower than the PetSmart.
A foot lower.
Because the PetSmart is at a different finished floor elevation. So PetSmart is 29.5 feet above, based on the drawings I have, PetSmart is 29.5 feet above finished floor. With the finished floor of 645.5, and Ulta is going to be 30 feet above finished floor with a finished floor of 644.5.
Okay, so this here is taller than this.
PetSmart elevation will be at an elevation of 675, and Ulta the revised elevation is going to be, I don't have that number here.
So
674.
So my reaction is that you've got these bright blues, and then you have grays and whites, and the beige and the especially the salmon don't seem to go with all that.
These are the colors the tenant is looking for, and it's something they're insisting on.
So the salmon, though, is going to be there?
Because you don't call it out. It's going to be on the sides of this parapet that's projecting farther upward. So it's basically they're coloring in the area that's right here above this post.
Of the columns, correct.
Right, above this column.
They
and
missed
then above
calling
this
that out.
column, or actually it's this column, and they want to make it salmon colored, which doesn't match anything around it.
You confirm the salmon is in the design, or is it a rendering defect?
No, the only thing that's missing is the call out of the color, but
Okay.
these are the colors the tenant is looking for.
Why salmon?
Don, do you have an answer for that?
Don, are you there?
Unfortunately, I don't. That's just the Five Below color.
Well, the Five Below is the blue color, right?
Correct, but the China white, the oyster shell, those are all their colors to go with the blue.
The oyster shell is one thing, but the salmon next to the oyster shell is another.
Yeah, I'm looking at images of Five Below signs at other places here, and I don't see any need for salmon. I don't see that as part of their logo. It's just not there. I mean, it's not. I don't know what that is, but I don't know that it's necessary. Yeah, I think it might be a,
I know how to deal with this. I deal with this actually on a daily basis. You have two choices, either make a tan or nothing at all. We should propose
or
that.
leave it.
That works with my daughter every time.
I actually happen to like this sign, which has sort of a white background around the Five Below. But this is all about architectural review, and we all have our different architectural. I think you're putting in something more like that. But the colors,
Go to the one that's on top of that, the right-hand side where you just,
right-hand side?
that one right there, ooh, your mouse was just on it.
Ooh.
The one, yeah, that one, is that on the corner?
This?
Does that have the different colors?
That's a surround that's part of the, it's all part of and built into their shopping center. And this is actually, I like the sign. I like the way this comes out. And I love this canopy. But that's the shopping center.
I was just looking for the other color again.
Well, I'm not sure if it's an error on the plan since it's not called out, but I mean, you do have a meeting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, do you want to come back to get that straightened out?
Because I don't know how much.
Only thing missing is the color call-out, but the color as shown is what the tenant is looking for. We received this
You
rendering
can't
from
make
them.
it white to match the
Maybe
pillar
ask
color?
the tenant to.
Yeah, I'm not going to accept the salmon. That's me. I'm okay with the blue. I actually happen to like that blue if it's outlined in a bigger white background, but this is okay. But that salmon just doesn't go with everything else. And in fact, the kind of beigey look doesn't necessarily go with the gray pedestals, but you've already got America Best there that's in gray.
Mike, you see how in the existing, where America's Best is now, it continues on in that gray all the way up until there's that area where the Ulta sign was, and then it seems to be the same gray on the other side. I mean, that just seems to make more sense to me that where the salmon is being proposed, that it stay that gray. You're not adding in this extra odd color. I think the gray is more in keeping with the
Tenant is
the
doing
oyster
that.
shell and
They're doing it so that their space stands out, and it's uniform, so you have that column on both sides, and it's totally, that column looks like it's their space, and it's separate from America's Best.
Well, if they want to come up with another color, that's fine, but salmon doesn't go well with that mix.
How about if we make those, what we're calling salmon, if we just make that also Don, do you have recommendations that we could put in here so we could agree on a color?
How about brick?
Yeah, brick's cool.
Bring up the brick. Can you bring up, if you want them to stand out, can you?
That's good, you're gonna project out then, because that'll add on to
No, like it'll be a flat brick, you're not putting actual brick in.
Send it in.
Or is it just a color to match the brick?
No. Color's different than making it stand out because of the material.
that if we had that all the same oyster shell color.
As in this, what's here?
Yeah, the same oyster shell color. We'll just put a vertical groove in the ephes to make it stand out.
So if you can, I'm not sure, hold on, is that what's there now? Because I thought it's already painted gray. because of the,
So the oyster shell is a proposed new color.
so right now, this color, I think, may have been changed already because of America's Best, or is that the same? It's a little hard to tell from these photos.
Photos are current photo. The top photo is a current photo.
Okay, were the pedestals changed from what we see here on the image on the screen to a grayer color to match
No,
America's Best?
we have the pilasters are matching the existing,
So the pilasters are exactly the same as existing?
matching the existing colors, correct?
That, okay, to my eye, that color doesn't look grayish blue. This looks grayish blue, as if you're painting it a new color. You're not painting it a new color than what's there already?
It's gonna what we note on
Yeah,
here is
that's
the,
what I'm saying. I'm wondering if it's already been painted. So to say we're gonna do ochre, I don't know that that's the color that's there now. All right. I think we need to all look at this. I mean, we have a meeting in 2 weeks. We can easily put you back on. We could put you on first.
I don't think it needs to be that complicated. The existing pilasters are gonna match the existing colors that are there. The photo that's on the top of the page is a real photo. When it's printed on paper, maybe it's slightly different than if you're looking at it in sunlight or if you're looking at it at night. The colors to your eye is gonna be a little different. The canopies were changing from red to blue. And in the field, we're showing that we have around the sign is that blue color. And then we have it as shown, the colors called out for oyster shell for the main field. It sounds like the only objection here is the one color we don't call out, which we're calling salmon. And I'm proposing that we just make that also the oyster shell.
I mean, I think
Okay.
that would serve to, at least for Five Below's purposes, define their space. This is all our space that's
Right.
in the oyster shell. The other suggestion I might make is, I'd have to kind of see it in a mock-up, but if they want an accent color on either side of the oyster shell, use the Five Below blue. You're still defining the space. You're separating it out from America's Best. It's cohesive with everything else that's there. And you use that blue again. But you're not adding this. Any other color that you add in there is just another color that isn't going to be complementary to me. So use one of the, I get what you're saying about the oyster shell and doing it across the board. I wouldn't necessarily be adverse to that. But if it's important to make that higher portion distinct, you've got another color to use. It's in their sign logo.
I'm okay with the oyster shell, if you make it all the same. What does everybody else feel?
You extended the existing pillar color straight to the crown.
I was okay with that, too.
3 options to go back to the client. or the
So same color as the pillar, or the oyster shell that you're showing is the main color on that reconstructed facade, or I guess that's the 2.
Fine.
Is that okay? So which one would you prefer? Or do you want to go back to the client?
I think we'll call it that, what we've been calling salmon, we're gonna just make that the oyster shell, and exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather have that, I think that we'll hopefully get that to work, and
Okay.
we don't have
And
to
then
come
you'll
back.
resubmit just this updated with that color?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I will make a motion. Do I have to type this as an action, so I'll make a motion that we determine this is a type 2 action, not subject to seeker. May I have a second?
Second?
Noreen? Yes.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
Lou Rivera, and Dylan Penn.
Aye.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Lou, did you have any other color options? Or you're okay with the conversation?
I'm okay with the conversation. I'm okay with the conversation.
Okay. I'll make sure.
I don't think it was, to be very honest with you, I don't think it's going to make a big difference once the new facade goes up. I don't think people are going to be looking at the sides. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. So I'll make a motion that we approve the exterior sign for Five Below and the exterior facade changes. Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah, please.
A motion to issue architectural review based on the submission of September 8th, 2022, and to waive the other submission requirements conditioned on the applicant returning to the planning board to adjust the lighting level of the interior lit sign if required by the planning board within 6 months of installation. That was consistent with your other.
Okay. And as modified so that the color oyster
Yes.
shell will be used for the areas above the columns.
As modified to reflect oyster shell in place of the satin.
Okay, thank you. So Ashley made the motion. No. So I'll make that motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Nick. Yes, you are. Noreen?
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Louis Rivera.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. So I think with that, we're down to minutes.
exciting part.
The minutes, yes. So have we determined we can't approve September 8th, 2020? Oh, sorry.
The only three that we have quorum for at this point are the three that are there. The May and June, July, we had Steve Thaw, so the suggestion is maybe bring him back for one meeting and approve all the minutes that we have open with him in them.
Nah, he's not
Or
going
they-
to come back.
He would.
He would? Should we really make him come back for the minutes?
So, well, I mean, I wouldn't make him come for the whole meeting, but maybe set a time for him to come in, but, or they just.
Maybe
remain
we'll
up
do
in
that.
draft.
Let's think about it for next month.
Yeah, well, they just remain up in draft. But
Okay.
at this point, we have the beginning of the year in draft. If we approve these three.
Okay.
And then we have the next 3 months in draft,
All right.
is what we're at.
Okay, so first, Ashley and Sean, if you'd like to leave and not go through the minutes, that's fine. You're welcome.
She does, she's hungry.
No one else can excuse themselves?
Ashley's bringing snacks to the next meeting.
Oh, good. Yeah, this went long, but we had some big items on the agenda. We had some resolutions to go through, so. All right, okay, so go through the minutes. Good night. Let's go through the minutes so I can bring them up. What's on the agenda?
March 15th?
March 15th.
Set the alarm off, I'll blame you.
March 15th.
Can I just, ask a question? I didn't ask during the meeting.
Sure. Yes?
You should recuse yourself from this conversation. But if they were to go bankrupt, we're pretty much, we're stuck with a station. We're standing there.
The thought was to, yeah, well. they were
I'll be
trying
right
to-
back. I'm going to the ladies' room.
Yeah, they were trying to tie him up to it legally.
RD Management did say that they would back it, because they're responsible for all that land.
Well, it was the same for the developer. What if they just became nobodies? What do they have on the books to, but from a state level, there's some protections. And I think I would like to kind of check in to see how far the remediation would need to go after the weekly tests are lapsed. So would it just be the tanks? Would it just be the dispensers?
My understanding is it would just be the tent, but assuming BJ's go, forget about BJ's going bankrupt, BJ's goes out. All right, thanks, George. if BJ's goes out, in the verbiage of the resolution, only a membership type club can run a gas station there. So realistically, either Costco or Sam's Club would have to come in behind BJ's for the gas station to continue to operate. If BJ's goes out and it's not going to be somebody coming after them, then BJ's is responsible for taking that out. If BJ's doesn't take it out, if they disappear in the middle of the night, which they're not going to, but if they were to, right, if they just ran off, then RD is responsible for that. If RD went out and didn't transition the property to someone else, you've got a way bigger problem than a gas station sitting there. All of those stores on both levels, with the exception of Target, are RD. So at that point,
Stock up on ammo.
It's not right. It's not an issue of
It's coming, baby.
there's a shell of a 6-pump gas station there, you know. BJ's is over 100,000 square feet. Walmart is the better part of 200,000 square feet. That's your, in my opinion, that's your concern at that point. But a number of things would have to happen between here and there, in my opinion. Having spent a bit of time in retail, we've got time before that's a concern.
Well,
It's
the money.
It's
It's
not
a $10 billion company, so.
It wasn't the money, yeah.
To Pat's point, it's not the money for the bond. It's the subordination when they refinance.
They go to refinance.
So they go to refinance. That bond is on the books. It goes into essentially what's called first position from a borrowing standpoint. So if RD went bankrupt, the bond would get paid and covered first before any lender would. Well, if someone's going to refinance that property, they're not going to do that with that bond in a position advanced to them. So that's where the issue is.
Banker, everybody. I had no idea what that was all about. That was cool.
Well, and the reality is it's still a condition. So they do have to take everything away. They do have to improve it and get rid of it. And it's because it's part of the resolution and the approval. And they're going to put a map note there. If they don't, it's taxpayers' money to go after them, but they will be violated and they would be required to remove it. And so we have the ability to do it. It's just we don't have the additional guarantee to have the monies to make sure that it's done. So, I mean, in the best of all worlds, you would, but I understood their position.
But yeah, and it's not the same situation as even a franchise corner gas station that's essentially mom and pop that goes out and disappears and never takes care of the underground tanks, never takes care of the mess that's left behind. Having lent on a lot of gas station properties, they're a nightmare because of what happens underneath the gas station. So, and that's where DEC comes in.
Well, and I think that the reality is there's different entities involved because you have RD management, you have BJ's, so given that, I think, and we have to see what changes might be made anyway, and Harriman's going to get involved, so they may have to put something into bond anyway, but we'll find out. So anyway, so we want to get to the 3:15 planning board minutes. All right. So the 4 of us were present. Did anyone have comments on this?
Not really so much of a comment, just like walk through. This is my first time doing a.
Well, I took special interest to say how he wanted to have the walkthroughs to explicitly lay out the landscaping plan or lack thereof. And that was one of the items that when I get the opportunity to walk, I'm going to listen in for.
Yeah, so we have so right now our order of business is to approve the minutes, but that we could talk about the field visit. So did anybody have changes on these minutes who is able to vote?
No.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the March 15th, 2022 minutes. May I have a second?
Second.
Noreen?
Aye.
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 And then just, I guess, abstentions for the other board members. All right, next is April 14th. And, yeah, I don't know, I don't know why it's not in my, so let me pull up my emails. I could swear I saved them here from this morning or afternoon, but I'm not seeing the number. Oop. Okay, so 315, 419, and 414? Okay. And 414, all right. So here's 414. On this was DG Management. And back and forth with Mr. Monroe. And
Is that George?
Mountain View Community Shul. Jay Myro.
Oh.
Oh, Mike Weeks was here that evening. He was in for Sean. All right. So anyone have edits to the 414 minutes? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the 414 minutes. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Noreen. And 419, so if this is 419, the top of this should say 419. Does it say workshop of 414? And I have 419 open. See how it says 419 up here? But this is 414? So this, when I open the file, 419, it has DG Management. What does your 414 say? I thought I just did the 414. Okay, hold on. This was 414. That's 414, DG Management. 419, DG. All right, so you'll take care of that? Okay. So I don't know what happened. All right, so is that our meeting, is that our minutes for, that we could do today? Okay. So if you want to talk quickly then about site visits.
I'm just gonna show up and rock with it, it's all right.
What I find with the site visits are, there's a big difference between looking at the project on paper and actually standing on the site and seeing the ground and the elevations and all of those things. And then when you come back to the plans make a lot more sense because you've actually seen it in 3D, live and in color. You kind of have a much better sense of space. We were talking about Monroe Commons before, and it's an 18-acre site. And yet when we got on the site, 18 acres was a lot smaller than it was in my mind.
Yeah.
So like, it's those kinds of things. Or we had a site visit at a project on Harriman Heights, and the applicant was trying to explain the issues with getting the driveways into the sites, and until you saw how the property met up with the road now, it just didn't make sense until I could see it live and in color. That's the benefit of the site visit, and that's kind of what you're looking to do is say, oh, that's what this picture would look like if I was really standing in the middle of it.
So I'd like to mention it with site visits, but I'd like to ask both Sean and Ashley if they could do a training session because we have a certain amount of hours that we're required to participate in for training. And I think Sean, it'd be good if he did some, maybe an overview on how to read maps.
That's what I would request.
And a good map, and what a good map, what would constitute a good map. And then I think Ashley can go into the basics again for
Procedure, like
procedure.
seeker and all that
Seeker,
stuff.
yeah, just so we
I
have,
need
yeah,
that.
so you have an overview for the new members. As far as field visits, so if there is a quorum present, or in general, when you're out on a field visit, you can ask questions of the applicant. You can ask Ashley and you can ask Sean questions. Where is this? Where's the retaining wall going? All that. What you can't do if your member's present that you shouldn't do is you can't deliberate. So you're supposed to observe, you're supposed to ask questions, you can communicate, but don't do anything that's almost like making decisions. I think you should put this here instead. That should all be in the meeting, that deliberation. Because we all have to adhere to the open meetings law. So when we deliberate and make decisions, it has to be in a public forum. So again, ask questions, you can communicate freely, wayfind your way around. You can talk to Ashley, you can talk to the engineer, you can talk to the applicant, but just, again, no deliberations. And of course, if you're by yourself, then it's not really an issue, but if there's multiple people there, then it's an issue, okay? And they're very useful. Nothing looks, sometimes, so the benefit of it is you'll go out into the field and you'll see something that's not on the plan. Or they've done a whole bunch of tree clearing that hasn't been shown on a plan. So you'll just get a sense of the site that you can't get from not being there. You should also feel free if you want to take photos. You can take photos if you want to remind yourself of something that you feel you need to bring up at a planning board meeting. If you want to share it, send it to Noreen, and Noreen can circulate it around to the board members. So feel free to take pictures with the camera, your smartphone, whatever you want to do if you feel that's necessary. That's, of course, allowable as well. Okay?
Also, just for the benefit of the newer members, once an application is in front of us, and for every application, we have site visit permission at any time. So you can go out to any of the sites and walk the property. As a planning board member, we've been given that authority. There's a document that's signed by every applicant that allows us that. So as long as that application's in front of us, you don't need a formal site visit to go see the site. I know Bonnie gets out to almost every site. I try to get out to as many of them as I can. Even if I don't go deep into the property, but just to get a sense of what it really is, as opposed to what it looks like on paper.
So if it's a big property, I don't think we really have them in Monroe, but in some of my other communities, I will let the homeowner or the property owner know, just so that someone knows you're there. Or otherwise, let your spouse or your family member know where you are. Yeah, and I like to wear my badges on the field visit in case I encounter someone and why are you here? But
I did have to use mine one time. Like the grounds crew came out at Pilati Village and, can we help you? But I don't think they were actually suggesting that they wanted to be helpful. They just wanted to know what I was doing
Can I help
there.
you off the property?
Right. But as soon as I show, except I'm from the planning board, here's my, ID, da-da-da. I'm just here, there's an application. Oh, yeah, no problem,
But know that you will feel like an enforcer when you start wearing that badge. It feels like power. Because I was on the trails over by the lake, and I had the dogs, and you're not supposed to have the dogs within the soccer field or the baseball field. It says right there, no dogs in park. And so there were people with their dogs. Huh? No, the other people were breaking the rules. Like, you're not supposed to have the dogs here. But then you feel like, okay, I'm official because I have my badge. So if you want,
Take your picture.
yeah. So make sure you get those, because I think it's useful. Plus, is there anything else they get besides the badge? We have the lanyard, right? Okay, all right. All right, so with that, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn the
I
meeting?
will.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right. Any nays, any abstentions?